Chapter 22. We provide you with exciting novels to read. They knew what Jiang Pingji wanted them to do. If their family followed the smoke and found that the kidnapped noble ladies were listless and disheveled, they would definitely let their imagination run wild. When they went back to explain, even if they proved that they were innocent, there would still be people who would slander them in private. Jiang Pingji looked into the distance and suddenly said, "Those useless things have finally found us. How did you know?" The sky was bright, and Feng Jin could see Jiang Pingji's face clearly. He had to admit that he had been lucky to be able to see through her disguise last night. Jiang Pingji had changed into a new set of clothes and tied her hair up. She looked like a delicate and elegant young man. "The birds over there are panicking, and they're approaching us. It's very likely that they're the guards," Jiang Pingji said with certainty, but she felt a little regretful. If it were her old self, she would have been able to see the shadows moving in the distance. If she had the help of tools, she would have been able to see further. Unfortunately, Lu Lanting's body was not strong enough, so she could only judge from the birds. Feng Jin thought about it and asked, "Then, should I and my guards stay away for a while?" All of them were men. Even though Jiang Pingji was also a man and had stayed outside the house the whole night, she was still considered a stranger. If someone used this to slander the noble ladies, it would damage their reputation. Jiang Pingji thought about it and nodded in agreement. "I didn't think it through. I'm sorry, Huayu." That was how harsh the ancient times were. Jiang Pingji's good mood turned gloomy when she thought about it. "Which family do you belong to?" Jiang Pingji asked. Seeing that Feng Jin and the others had moved away, Jiang Pingji appeared in front of the guards. After searching for a whole night, everyone was tired and hungry. The leader of the guards, a plump middle-aged man, wiped his sweat and tried his best to identify them. "You are? Lu Langjun." Everyone knew that other than the missing girls, the second son of the Lu family, Lu Lanting, was also there. He widened his eyes and realized that the handsome young man standing in front of him was none other than the Lu family's Langjun who had been missing for a day and a night. "I'm the steward of the Wei mansion." The slightly plump man raised his hand and wiped his sweat with his sleeve. His eyes were bloodshot from staying up all night. Peng had finally found someone, but now he was so anxious that he was about to cry. "My wife and Lu Langjun were kidnapped." Langjun, the housekeeper of the Wei Manor, was about to grab Jiang Pingji's hands, but he quickly figured out what was strange. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "So it's Jing Er's housekeeper. Don't worry, your wife is fine." This, Langjun, how can you make fun of me at a time like this?" The steward didn't seem to believe her. "Come with me. Jing and the others are safe. They were just a little frightened and need to rest for a few days." Jiang Pingji glanced at the tired servants behind her and suppressed the urge to ridicule them. The steward of the Wei Manor knew that Lu Lanting and Wei Jingxian were engaged, and the two families had frequent interactions. Even though he was an inconspicuous steward, he could recognize Lu Lanting's face. But for some reason, he felt that the situation was a little strange. "I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to find them, so I lit a bonfire for the whole day. When I saw the birds in the forest being startled, I knew that someone was coming." Even though they looked pitiful, their efficiency was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. "Jing and the ladies from the other manors are in that room. But for the sake of your reputation, send the maids in." Jiang Pingji calmly stepped into the bandits' hideout. The steward and the servants behind her almost fell flat on their faces. To maximize the effect, Jiang Pingji asked Feng Jin's guards to help move the bandits' corpses out to dry on the ground. The corpses were piled up in a mess. The blood on their bodies had already dried up, so everyone who entered could see the spectacular scene. Lu Langjun. The steward was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. He looked at Lu Lanting, who was calm and silent, with fear in his eyes. Could it be that his wife had already been killed a long time ago, and the Lu Langjun in front of him was also a malicious spirit? But just like the other noble ladies, she was filled with resentment and turned into a malicious spirit that night, killing all the bandits who had harmed them. That was why the current scene was happening? Those bandits, those audacious fellows, they should pay for their actions. For example, losing their lives or something. Jiang Pingji did not turn around. She casually answered, but she noticed that the people behind her had stopped. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" The steward looked like he was about to collapse. He lay on the ground and cried, "Lu Ling, you died so unjustly," Jiang Pingji secretly complained in her heart. "I don't really understand the brain structure and circuitry of ancient humans," the system said. "No. Maybe they were just misled by you and were scared out of their wits." No one doubted the fate of the kidnapped noble ladies. Even if they were still searching, they were mentally prepared to find a bunch of corpses. Some of the families had even started to prepare for their funeral. But what happened? Not only did Jiang Pingji appear in clean clothes, but there was also a pile of bandits' corpses in the den. Was that not scary? Wei Jingxian heard the familiar voice of the steward and almost cried with joy. "It's the steward from the manor. They found us." What a bunch of useless people. If Brother Lanting had not lit the bonfire outside for so long, who knows when they would have found us? Shang Wan pouted angrily. "Maybe they would have waited for the weeds on their graves to grow 3 feet high. What nonsense are you talking about? Who taught you to say such nonsense?" Wei Jingxian stopped her from spouting nonsense. "It's inauspicious." Not long after, the stewards and servants of other families came to find them. They all had the same reaction when they saw the pile of corpses. The sun in the sky was warm, and they were wearing quite a lot of clothes, but there was a strange feeling of coldness that seeped into their bones. Jiang Pingji waited for half a day. The families of the other noblewomen had all arrived. Even the Hejian County chief had crawled up the stairs with the help of his servants. Lu Lanting's family was nowhere to be found. That was strange. These are the bandits who were killed? The governor of Hejian County wiped his sweat and breathed heavily like a cow. Looking at those corpses, he couldn't help but shiver and his legs were trembling. If it were not for the people beside him holding him up, he would have fallen to the ground. Jiang Pingji cupped her hands and replied, "Yesterday, I was accidentally kidnapped by thieves. After thinking hard, I found a solution. I secretly stirred up their internal strife and took the opportunity to kill them one by one. That's how I was able to protect the noble lady's reputation." The Hejian prefecture chief was in disbelief when he heard that Jiang Pingji had killed the bandits. Then he felt goosebumps all over his body. The prefecture chief's eyebrows were so tightly knitted that they could kill a fly. He called Jiang Pingji over and asked, "Come forward and tell me what happened." Chapter 23. Hejian County's governor was not stupid. Since there were so many people around, he had to solve the problem. That way, the noblewomen's chastity could be preserved. Even though he thought Jiang Pingji was bragging, she might really be able to do it. Oh, next was Jiang Pingji's time to act cool. No, to give another speech to explain the time. Everyone was stunned. When he saw that the noble ladies of the various families were unscathed, he had no choice but to believe it even more. At that moment, the governor finally calmed down. He looked at Jiang Pingji in a new light. The young man in front of him was the benefactor who had saved his official position and his life. Otherwise, he would have been killed by the families of the noble ladies, even if he had a high social status and background. He wouldn't have been able to struggle at all if he had been targeted by the families of the noble ladies. How could such a serious thing happen while he was in office? He did not want to live. Seeing that all the noblewomen were being carried down the mountain by the servants except for Jiang Pingji, the governor's eyes flashed. "Nephew Lu, why don't you follow me down the mountain? The road is rugged, and it's easy to get lost without a guide." The governor of Hejian County was also a clever person. Without Jiang Pingji's knowledge, he directly called her nephew as a sign of intimacy. She thought for a while and nodded, even though she did not know when Hejian County's governor had become her uncle. Feng Jin and the others had secretly followed the servants, so they should not get lost. She only had to worry about herself. She did not know what Lu Lanting's family was thinking. They had lost their son, but they did not send any servants or stewards to look for him. She sat in the sedan and was carried down the mountain by the bearers. When they reached the flat mountain road, they changed carriages. In the carriage, Jiang Pingji was bored. She asked the system to turn on the live stream. It was good to chat with the audience. However, her channel was a newbie livestream. Yesterday's viewers were lucky to be able to watch it, but today's luck was bad. Even though it was the exclusive carriage of the governor of Hejian County, there was an obvious jolt. But this time, the coachman was much better than the bandits. He drove steadily. Even though there was a jolt, he didn't feel sick after sitting for a long time. Seeing Jiang Pingji sitting at the side in silence, he could not help but think of how she looked when she was standing alone. "Nephew Lu, are you wondering why no one in the family went out to look for you?" The governor of Hejian County was not as observant as Jiang Pingji, but he had been in the officialdom for many years. He was an old fox when it came to the ways of the world. Jiang Pingji snapped out of her reverie and subconsciously scanned through Lu Lanting's memories of her family. Her brows furrowed. Perhaps it's because father is about to return and the household is too busy, so he can't spare any manpower for now, Jiang Pingji answered as such, but in her heart, she was extremely disgusted. Relying on the fact that the emperor was far away, that woman really dared to do such a thing. Lu Lanting's mother was born into a prominent family in Langya County. She and Lu Lanting's father had been in love for many years, and the couple had always been a harmonious couple. In the second year of their marriage, they gave birth to a son, who died in less than 2 years. In the fourth year, they gave birth to Lu Lanting, a pair of twins, which was considered an auspicious sign. Having learned their lesson from their eldest son, they took good care of their second son and eldest daughter. However, due to the servant's carelessness, the 4-year-old son accidentally fell into the water and died. No one knew what happened after that, but it was announced to the public that it was the younger sister who died, not the second son. But from then on, Lu Lanting's mother's health deteriorated and she passed away within half a year. In order to maintain the good relationship between the two families and to take care of Lu Lanting's father was persuaded to marry Lu Lanting's mother's sister. In fact, Jiang Pingji did not understand the logic behind it at all. Marrying his wife's sister after his wife's death and having sex with his sister-in-law. She really did not understand the way men thought in this world. Could it be that they could not beat dumplings, could not beat their sisters-in-law, and could not beat their sisters-in-law in bed? Of course, it was not that the stepmother did not treat Jiang Pingji well. As a bystander, Jiang Pingji could see that the stepmother treated her stepson as if he was her own child and cared for him every day. She took care of Jiang Pingji's studies but did not push her too hard. Occasionally, she would cook some nourishing soup and send it to Jiang Pingji. Her daily task was to remind the maids and servants to take care of Jiang Pingji whenever the weather changed so that Jiang Pingji would not fall sick. Based on the parenting methods of this era, this was the standard for a biological mother. The crux of the problem was another concubine in the house. Although she was a concubine, everyone called her Madam Who when they were behind closed doors. Oh, by the way, Madam Who was Father Lu's cousin. She had a good family background and could have been the legal wife of Father Lu, but she ignored the ridicule of others and insisted on being Father Lu's concubine. The stepmother had always been weak. Since the end of last year, she had been bedridden and had not recovered. The time she was awake every day was pitiful. The person in charge of the house was the domineering Madam Hu. Was it reasonable that no one came to look for her? Jiang Pingji put her hand on her forehead. She felt that she might still see her coffin when she returned home. Based on Lu Lanting's memories of Madam Hu, it was possible that she would do such a thing. The shrewd Hejian County governor looked at Jiang Pingji's expression and knew that she was in trouble. I invited a few old friends to my house for tea today, but after the incident yesterday, I asked the housekeeper to reject the invitation. I didn't expect the matter to be resolved so quickly. Now I'm free and have nothing to do. My dear nephew, are you willing to let me send you back? You can use it as a way to kill time. The plump governor smiled amiably. He seemed to be very close to Jiang Pingji. Thank you, governor. Jiang Pingji cupped her hands in thanks. Having the governor send her home would save her a lot of trouble. At that moment, the system, which had been silent for a while, trembled with excitement. Host, this will be the first battle in your life. A good start can double the results with half the effort. Although Jiang Pingji hated infighting in the harem, she could settle for the next best thing. Fighting in the harem did not necessarily involve the wife fighting the concubine, or the concubine teasing the wife. It could also involve the legitimate son/daughter/illegitimate son/daughter/mother/sibling. If there were some conflicts, it could escalate to fighting one's grandmother. If one was unlucky, they might even have to fight their relatives. The host could not just kill someone with a single slap, could she? Boring, Jiang Pingji replied. The system was furious, but it kept telling itself to calm down and take deep breaths. Then what do you think is interesting? My stepmother and Madame Hu. Jiang Pingji paused and then said, they are both pretty. The system was speechless. It suddenly understood. Father Lu, your fake son is trying to flirt with your second wife and concubine. Chapter 24. Although Hejian County was not a big place, it was a place of outstanding people. Many of Dongqing's prestigious gentry families were gathered here. Lu Lanting's family had been around since the 16 Kingdoms. Although it was not a prominent family, it had been around for more than 300 years. In recent years, the Lu family had become more and more low-key. Other than Lu Lanting's father, who was an official with real power, the rest of the family held relatively leisurely positions. Some even lived in seclusion, and some were famous scholars. From an outsider's point of view, the Lus seemed to be slowly going downhill, but Jiang Pingji felt that the family was quite smart. They could relax a little in everything except the studies of the children in the family. Every child who entered the family school had to be strictly supervised by their parents. Although Lu Lanting's father was also a legitimate son, he was not a descendant of the family. Aside from her messy relatives, Lu Lanting's family was rather simple. Her stepmother asked to stay in Hejian County to take care of Lu Lanting. After all, most of the great scholars in Dongqing came from Hejian County, Langya County, and Ning County. It was not a good place for Lu Lanting's father to live, and it was said that he had to take great risks. Not only that, it was impossible to find a knowledgeable teacher in that barren land. For some unknown reason, Madame Hu did not follow Lu Lanting to Hejian County. Instead, she chose to stay in Hejian County. From time to time, she would give Lu Lanting a hard time or say some specious things, but she did not do anything out of line. When Father Lu went out to take up a post, the whole family moved out of the clan. They bought a 3-sectioned house near the clan grounds. The house wasn't big, but it was still much better than living in the clan's crowded land. He could also control the things in the house. Lu Lanting lived on 3 Squirrel Street. Jiang Pingji lifted the curtains of the carriage slightly and could see the deserted entrance of the Lu mansion from afar. Brother Lu is not here, so it's not appropriate for me to disturb you. The governor smiled like the Maitreya Buddha. Outside, a quick-witted servant had already jumped off the carriage and knocked on the door of the Lu mansion, informing them that the second Langjun of the Lu family had returned safely. If you have any difficulties in your studies, feel free to look for me. Although I am not as knowledgeable as your father, I can still do my bit. Jiang Pingji nodded and thanked the governor. A governor was in charge of a county, so it was reasonable to say that he should have a lot of power. However, this also depended on the region's governor. In fact, according to the land area and the number of people, Hejian County was actually smaller than a county. However, this place had a different meaning, so it was specially changed to county. The prefectural governor here was only a small official of the size of a sesame seed. In a small place like Hejian County, the position of the governor was equivalent to retirement. Jiang Pingji had helped him a lot, so he was very intimate with her. As soon as she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji vaguely heard the Lu mansion's servant shout in ecstasy, "Second Langjun is back." Jiang Pingji had expected to see a house full of white flags, or at least her coffin. She didn't expect to see such a cold and cheerless scene. It was not normal. What happened at home when I wasn't here for the whole day? The servant was pleasantly surprised by his appearance. In other words, it was as if he had seen his backbone and savior. Jiang Pingji's eyes swept over him, and all kinds of information filled her mind. The servant had slept on the prostitute's bed last night and smelled of alcohol, which meant that he had not gone out to look for Lu Lanting. The rouge on his finger and the prostitute he slept with were not from the same person. TSK, this man does not look honest. The servant had no idea that not only did Jiang Pingji know where he had slept the night before, but she also knew that he had gone to the gambling house to earn some money. She was considering whether to transfer him, a servant who had neglected his duties, from the gatekeeper's office to another position, or to simply dismiss him. Second Lang Jun, you're finally back. The First Lady and Madam who fainted when they heard that you were kidnapped. The doctor is still with the First Lady, and he almost passed away last night. Madam who fell sick again after she woke up, and she sent all the servants into the mountains to look for you. There is no one left in the house, and now that the master is not home, if anything happens to you. The servant rubbed his hands together. He seemed to be very happy, but his eyes unnaturally avoided Jiang Pingji's gaze. It was a subconscious act of modesty. Jiang Pingji looked away from the servant and chased the unnecessary information out of her mind. What she had analyzed was too much for her eyes to bear. She interrupted the servant's rambling and asked, "Have all the servants who went into the mountains to look for me gone?" The servant replied, "Yes. Other than the maidservants who stayed behind to take care of the two ladies, everyone else is gone." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and asked, "Including you?" The servant did not know that Jiang Pingji had set a trap for him, so he immediately patted his chest to show his loyalty. Second Lang Jun, what are you talking about? I'm very loyal to you. Everyone in the house was worried when they found out that you were kidnapped. Of course how did the powder taste last night? Jiang Pingji asked abruptly. Remember to cover your face when you gamble. The servant who was leading the way staggered and almost fell to the ground. His slightly mean face was full of astonishment. Go and find the housekeeper for punishment. If I catch you again, I will sell you to the traffickers. Jiang Pingji snorted. She hated this kind of clumsy acting that did not even have the basic qualities of an actor. Did he really think that she was as gullible as a 3-year-old? The gatekeeper was so scared that he did not dare to make a sound. He was still in a daze. Coincidentally, the housekeeper of the Lu's ran over. Second Lang Jun. Father Lu had not been back for many years, but the Lu's house was still running well. This had to do with the housekeeper. Jiang Pingji glanced at the old housekeeper and was satisfied. I'm back. How is mother? The housekeeper almost burst into tears when he saw Jiang Pingji in the flesh. He had always been a stickler for rules. If he had not been so happy, he would not have run over in such a hurry. The first madam's condition has worsened. I'm afraid, Jiang Pingji frowned and said, let's talk while we walk. Is mother's condition really that serious? According to Lu Lanting's memory, the second madam had been bedridden and had been taking medicine all year round, but she had looked fine the day before yesterday. She had even cooked a bowl of longevity noodles for Lu Lanting during the flower festival half a month ago, which was Lu Lanting's birthday. The old housekeeper's eyes flashed when he saw Jiang Pingji's unfamiliar clothes, but he did not show it. He just buried the question in his heart. Yesterday, a servant did not know what was going on and reported that the second Lang Jun had been killed by thieves. The first madam fainted when she heard that. Madam, who was also shocked and immediately sent the servants to look for him. I don't know who he offended, but not long after, I heard that the third Lang Jun was playing with the maidservants in the backyard and accidentally fell and hurt his head. All of a sudden, the 3 masters of the house were seriously ill. They looked for doctors everywhere. Jiang Pingji suddenly stopped in her tracks. She suddenly felt that she had made a mistake. Chapter 25. We provide you with exciting novels to read. According to Lu Lanting's memories, she was a bookworm who only knew how to read books. She rarely paid attention to the affairs of the household. Before Lu Lanting's father took up his post, he had bought the house with 3 entrances. Although it was safe for the second lady to live with the women in her father's backyard, there were too many people in the house. Without an adult male in the house, it was easy for gossip to spread. Perhaps that was why Lu Lanting's father moved his family out. The house he bought was very close to his people's land. If something happened, the second lady could ask for help from her people. If there was nothing else, she could live her life in seclusion. However, how many guards could there be in a small house with 3 entrances? Not to mention the fact that the 2 mistresses in the house had fallen ill, and the bastard son was playing around and banging his head. In this era, if brain injuries were not taken care of in time, they could easily be fatal. Jiang Pingji's head hurt even more when she entered the house. I didn't die. I was just kidnapped. Those thieves are too stupid, and I managed to escape. Just now, it was the prefect who sent me here. Jiang Pingji explained briefly. Then she thought of the gatekeeper and added, I'll go see my mother first. Can you find the servants who went looking for me last night? I have some questions to ask them. It seemed that it was not that madam who did not send people out, but that there were too few of them. The servants thought that the chance of survival was too low for their Langjun to encounter bandits was too low, so they went to fish in troubled waters. For example, the gatekeeper who fought with the prostitute all night. That showed how lax the family's rules were. Thinking about that, Jiang Pingji could not help but smile coldly. It was true that the Lu family was an aristocratic family, but after Father Lu moved out, he had been working outside all year round. There were no men left at home who could hold the fort. It was almost predictable that the servants would slack off and neglect their duties. It was not that the master was incapable, but that the servants had their own agendas. The second lady lived in the east side of the house. It was different from the bustling scene of an ancient noble family. The Lu family's house was rather desolate. There were only 2 or 3 maids walking around. Those who did not know better would think that the second branch of the Lu family was in dire straits. Although Jiang Pingji was a stepson, the lady was also Lu Lanting's aunt. It did not matter if Jiang Pingji entered the lady's bedroom. It was still sunny outside, but the inside of the room was dark and gloomy, and the air was filled with the lingering smell of medicine. Walking around the screen, Jiang Pingji saw the general layout of the room. It was so simple that it did not look like something a noble lady should have. There were a few boxes on the dressing table. The style was old, and it was obvious that they had been used for a long time. Next to the bronze mirror was an exquisite spring butterfly hairpin. Jiang Pingji's gaze fell on the hairpin for 2 seconds. She then shifted her gaze and glanced at the furnishings in the room. The second lady was lying on the bed, her face as pale as snow. Her black hair was interspersed with many white strands, making her look a little older. Her eyes were dark and she looked sick. Jiang Pingji took the medicine from the maidservant's hand and knelt beside the bed to take over the task of feeding the medicine. It was a pair of eyes that could see through the affairs of the mortal world, and it also gave off the feeling of being watched by a kind elder. Ting. Before Jiang Pingji arrived, the second lady had just come back from the brink of death. Now that she saw Jiang Pingji again, her eyes were watery. Yes, I'm back. Jiang Pingji smiled warmly. She did not dare to look at the bowl of black medicine that gave off a strange smell. The ancient people were really the originators of dark cuisine. How did they create such a terrible medicine? Could it cure illnesses? Could it really not kill people? I remember before. The second lady's gaze became gentle and nostalgic. Her voice was weak, but she still took a few breaths. Slowly she said, "Someone said that you were dead. How could I believe them? I went to the Bridge of Helplessness and saw my sister." Jiang Pingji thought to herself, "Lu Lanting is as dead as a doornail." "Mother, don't talk. Drink the medicine first." Jiang Pingji extended her free hand to the back of her neck and hugged her skinny shoulders. She helped her up and leaned her against her chest so that she could drink her medicine and not choke. "Then have a good sleep." Jiang Pingji nodded. Lying in bed for too long was easy to develop bedsores. Jiang Pingji saw that the second lady's collar was wet and red, so she quietly ordered the maidservant to boil some water. After the second lady drank the medicine, the maidservant could wipe the second lady's collar and change the mattress. The air in the room was terrible, and it was not suitable for a sick person to rest. The second lady frowned and drank the bitter medicine that Jiang Pingji had just blown on it. Jiang Pingji saw that the second lady still had a bitter look on her face. She looked at the remnants of the medicine at the bottom of the bowl and immediately felt the bitterness in her mouth. She turned to the maidservant and said, "Bring more candied plums for mother." I wonder how much yellow lotus the doctor added to the medicine. According to Jiang Pingji's memory, the relationship between Lu Lanting and the second lady was one-sided and cold. Lu Lanting had always thought that the second lady was the biological mother, so she did not care about the second lady's constant concern for her well-being. She even thought that the second lady was a hypocrite. Fortunately, the second lady still maintained a kind front and did not reveal her displeasure. Otherwise, Jiang Pingji's intimate actions would easily arouse suspicion. "My son, did you suffer last night?" The second lady's eyes were cloudy, and her voice was stronger than before. "No, those idiots who don't bring their brains with them when they go out, how could they make me suffer?" Jiang Pingji wanted to put the second lady down, but from the corner of her eye, she saw a maidservant carrying a clean mattress over. Jiang Pingji wrapped the second lady in the blanket and stretched her other hand under the second lady's legs. She lifted the second lady up while she gasped in surprise. "Mother, don't be afraid. I can still carry you." Let the maidservant change the mattress and warm it up with a hand stove. The second lady said, "My son is becoming more and more like a sister. Tell me about what happened last night." Jiang Pingji looked at the second lady and curled her lips. "Mother, if you're listening, I will tell you everything I know." Jiang Pingji hated repeating the same thing over and over again. It was refreshing once, but it was boring if it was repeated too many times. But since it was a request from a classically elegant beauty, Jiang Pingji did not mind repeating it one more time. The second lady listened with great interest. When she was done, she looked at Jiang Pingji and the maidservants in the room, signaling them to leave. "How did she go?" The second lady smiled warmly when she noticed that Jiang Pingji was not surprised at all. "Aren't you afraid?" Jiang Pingji shook her head. "I thought that other people would be more afraid of this kind of thing." The second lady said, "You are an honest child. I can hide it from them. I'll just pretend that my son is still alive." Chapter 26. The Internet provides you with exciting novels to read. How could the second lady not be familiar with her son or daughter after living with her for more than a decade? According to Lu Lanting's memories, the second lady was a talented woman in Langyi County before she was married. It was just that her status as a concubine's daughter was rather low, so she had to keep a low profile. However, she was not stupid, so it was normal for her to see through her. "I saw Lanting and her younger brother at the Bridge of Helplessness, and my sister," he said with a distant look in his eyes. The second madam had stopped breathing several times, and everyone thought she was dead. Even the doctor thought so. However, her pulse gradually appeared again. Although it was still weak, it at least meant that she was still alive. However, the emotions of the maidservant who took care of her were fluctuating greatly, and she could not bear it. "My sister said that I have a great destiny. She wants me to come back and enjoy life. Don't cling to the past." Jiang Pingji did not believe in ghosts and gods, but it was interesting. "And then," the second lady said in a serious tone, "so I came back to see what kind of person has taken over Lanting's body." Jiang Pingji was embarrassed. "Are you going to leave after seeing me?" The second lady did not answer directly. Instead, she said, "After I saw you, I realized that you really look like my sister. It's as if I saw my sister. You look so much like the real Lanting. You look so much like her. I think my sister's dying wish has come true." "A dying request?" Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and raised her hand to pull up the blanket covering her body. She said, "Then you can wait to enjoy your leisure and happiness in the future." The system was waiting for a fight to break out, but what the hell? "Dear host, can you tell me what just happened?" The omnipotent system felt that it was about to become a useless, salted fish. "Is it that hard to understand?" That lady knew that I was not Lu Lanting the moment I entered the room, but because of her obsession with her sister and because I resemble her in some ways, she decided not to court death. She wanted to live a good life and enjoy life in peace. The system was dumbfounded. Why did she accept you so quickly? Wasn't she going to be drowned or burned to death? It remembered that one of its previous hosts was too simple-minded and was treated as a demon and burned to death on a rack of fire. Her sister probably isn't from this era either. I just saw some traces of ancient times in the second lady's room. I thought maybe it was because of this that my stepmother accepted me so well. No, I have to look for other clues. The modern era that Jiang Pingji mentioned was the era of technology after the feudal era. After a while, Jiang Pingji suddenly asked, "Cute system, can you answer me honestly? Am I your first host in this world?" The system hesitated for a moment before replying softly, "No, but my previous host had nothing to do with Lu Lanting's mother." But Jiang Pingji was at a loss for words. "I thought I came to an ancient era, but you're telling me that this world is a sieve? I have to give you a bad review. The second lady's sister, Lu Lanting's mother, might be from the ancient era." She had never heard of people from the ancient era making spring hair clips. That thing was on the second lady's dressing table. Of course, she could not rule out the possibility that the non-native was someone else. Based on the current information, it was most likely Lu Lanting's mother. That's normal. Sometimes, when the system opens a new dimension, it will cause a crack in the dimension for a short period of time. After all, it was too boring to just live stream. Adding some other elements would make things more interesting. Jiang Pingji immediately thought of something. Wait a minute. When I said that I would open a live stream, according to the audience's reaction, that dimension should be similar to the modern era. In other words, did the live stream mean that there was another non-native in this world? System, Jiang Pingji said with certainty, "You're guilty." "I'm afraid you'll give me a bad review," the system said pitifully. Following this host, it felt that its privacy as a system was completely gone QAQ. Jiang Pingji did not answer. As for whether or not she chose to believe the system's words, no one but herself knew. System, since the second lady did not expose you in front of everyone, does that mean she has acknowledged your identity? Something like that? If I can get away with it, I'll continue using Lu Lanting's identity. If not, I'll use my own identity. The world was big and there was nowhere to hide. Not to mention that in the ancient era, where the household registration system was not complete, Jiang Pingji could easily travel to a faraway place and create a fake identity. Jiang Pingji raised an eyebrow. "But she made a deal with me. I can use Lu Lanting's identity without worry." "A deal?" The system pulled up the conversation records. When did Jiang Pingji make a deal with the second lady? Jiang Pingji mercilessly attacked the system. "I believe that when you die, it will be because of your own stupidity." System, yen %hashtag %hashtag hashtag hashtag hashtag. Jiang Pingji only knew how to save a person's life, so the second lady's illness was still under the care of the doctor. She did not want to get involved. "Housekeeper, have you gathered all the servants?" Jiang Pingji was a vengeful person. If she could get her revenge now, she would not wait for the next day. Moreover, the Lu residence had indeed changed. The old housekeeper had been Lu Lanting's grandfather's page boy when he was young. Later, he became a housekeeper and took care of Lu Lanting's father and the Lu family. However, he did not become arrogant just because he was treated with respect. Instead, he worked even harder for the Lu residents. The housekeeper followed behind Jiang Pingji. "I've gathered all the servants in the outer courtyard according to second Longjuan's instructions. Call the middleman over later and pick a few more servants. If you can't find anything, let eldest uncle know." Jiang Pingji was very used to the existence of slaves. In her era, the flames of war were everywhere, and there were many big and small battles. According to the interstellar war law, captives could be sold as slaves, so she didn't think there was anything wrong with looking for a middleman to buy servants. Jiang Pingji glanced at the guards and servants who were dressed neatly and uniformly. "Are they all here?" The housekeeper did not understand. He nodded and said, "Second Langjun, the servants who were sent out last night are all here." Jiang Pingji's expression turned cold. "Tell the middleman that we've sold them all. They're all dirty hands." The servants had thought that Jiang Pingji was there to reward them, and they were a little excited and expectant. They did not expect a bucket of cold water to fall from the sky. The bookworm's second Langjun, who knew nothing, actually said that he would sell them to human traffickers? The housekeeper hesitated for a second, but his loyalty won out. "Yes, second Langjun." Chapter 27. You want to know why? Jiang Pingji looked down at him and said, "You molested the maidservants of the inner court and even tried to force them. You have dirty hands and feet and embezzled the estate's finances. Moreover, a servant of the outer court came to the kitchen of the inner court. Who gave you the courage?" With every word Jiang Pingji said, the servant's face became paler, and his eyes were filled with panic. The housekeeper's expression changed. "Second Lang, you mean, furthermore, you didn't go to the mountains to look for me last night. Instead, you went to a prostitute's bed. You people go to brothels and drink together, but you like to gather in one place so that you can cover up for each other, right?" Jiang Pingji frowned in disgust and said to the housekeeper, "Before we sell them, get someone to search this and that house to see if there are any financial records of the manor. If there are, don't look for a middleman. Just send them to the magistrate's office." Second Lang Jun. "You have no evidence, so why are you slandering me?" The servant looked a little flustered, but he quickly calmed down and said, "My parents have served the master of the mansion with all their might, and there have never been any accidents. That's also the credit of your parents. What does it have to do with you stealing or not? Come to think of it, you've reminded me. Butler, investigate his parents as well. What kind of place do you think the Lu residence is? A place that keeps a bunch of leeches?" The housekeeper didn't understand. He didn't know how his Lang Jun had become so powerful overnight, but he was loyal. He would do whatever Jiang Pingji said. The servants were uneasy, but they did not believe that Jiang Pingji would really do that. Father Lu was about to return from his duties. He would arrive in a few days. The people in the Lu residence were arranged by her father before he left. If Jiang Pingji was really filial, she would not be so heartless. In this era, if one had the slightest reputation of being unfilial, one could forget about becoming an official. Thinking of this, everyone felt much more at ease. The system watched helplessly as its host's combat power was brutally and cleanly taken care of, and it was instantly dumbfounded. "Host, you don't have any evidence. If this gets out, others will have a bad opinion of you." According to the plot of the house fighting plot, the female lead would always have a battle of wits and courage with the servant. The servant would be cunning, while the female lead would be wise and powerful. Bit by bit, she would uncover the truth and throw the evidence in the servant's face, shattering his psychological defenses and finally achieving a complete victory. You condensed more than a dozen chapters of exciting otaku fights into 2 simple and crude sentences. Host, this is very unprofessional. Do you understand? Are you kidding me? Jiang Pingji really wanted to point at her own eyes and tell the system, "What I see with my eyes is evidence. Others can't see it because they're blind. Do I have to waste time and effort to point and tell them where to look?" The system, ginseng rooster again. Damn it, the system's days were numbered. Furthermore, do I need to accommodate them when dealing with a few problematic slaves? Do I have to bring out the evidence one by one? Tell me, who is the real master of the Lu residence? Is it those servants or me? Jiang Pingji was speechless at the system's logic. Jiang Pingji smiled and thought to herself, anyway, when the housekeeper finds evidence of corruption or cheating, no one will dare to say anything. This is also a warning. Don't lie to me, or they won't even know how they died. Understand? The system suddenly felt a chill run down its spine. It was as if it had been shot in the knee. Jiang Pingji was not worried that the housekeeper would deal with the servants. She simply ordered someone to prepare hot water and new clothes. The clothes she was wearing belonged to someone else. To avoid unnecessary trouble, it was better to change out of them as soon as possible. You're the fastest host I've ever seen to adapt to a new identity. The system said darkly, unsure if it was being sarcastic. Jiang Pingji said matter-of-factly, "That's because I make the best use of my circumstances. If I can be happy, why should I hold my breath?" Now that she was Lu Lanting, what was wrong with making use of her status? Lu Lanting's clothes were much more complicated than the one she had borrowed. They looked more luxurious, and the dark patterns and embroidery on them were exquisite. Of course, to Jiang Pingji, it looked more anti-human. She asked the maid to pick a plain one. Jiang Pingji lowered her head slightly and saw 2 maids helping her wrap up her chest. Then, they helped her put on the clothes one by one. Host, it seems like the fact that Lu Lanting is a girl is not a secret in the residence. She doesn't even have a study boy. She only has maids to serve her, the system muttered. I wonder why she disguised herself as a boy. Not everyone knows. Otherwise, those noble ladies would not have been so surprised when they found out that Lu Lanting is a girl. The system asked, specific people? For example, Lu Lanting's maids, the housekeeper, the second lady. They all know about it and will keep it a secret. If other people find out, who knows if they will spread it out because they are too talkative or have other motives. Lu Lanting alone was not enough to hide her identity. When Jiang Pingji was bathing, she had chased the maid out, but when it was time to put on her clothes, she had no choice but to call the maid back. The clothes were too anti-human. If there's a chance, I'd like to find out why Lu Lanting replaced his late brother. Incense was a popular trend nowadays. The maids had already prepared her clothes with incense, which had a calming effect on her. After putting on the anti-human clothes, the maid hung a jade pouch on her waist. Jiang Pingji felt like the pouch would jingle when she walked. Jiang Pingji thought that was enough until another servant girl came in with a plate of hairpin flowers. There's no need for that. She really couldn't resist the idea of having a colorful silk flower on her hair crown. Of course, she had read Lu Lanting's memories, so she knew that it was fashionable for men to use incense and flowers. But she still felt that it was too feminine. She could not bear to look at the beautiful flower on her head. I feel like something is missing. Jiang Pingji thought for a moment, and an idea came to her. She took out a sandalwood fan with engravings of bamboo. Doesn't this make me look more handsome? After the maid left, Jiang Pingji made a gesture of unsheathing her sword in the blurry bronze mirror. Then she opened the sandalwood fan in her hand. I was bored and watched the ancient TV series that I'm currently following. It's probably the standard look of a dissolute and uninhibited young man who can win over both men and women when he smiles. The system wanted to facepalm. Its host's integrity was always running away from home. It was tiring. Chapter 28. User 3216. From Tieba, the almighty streamer is indeed a mysterious girl 23333 user Ray 11. +1. The streamer's posture just now made my heart pound. Alice Baobei? Did the streamer really kill a lot of people yesterday? Jiang Pingji didn't understand. She glanced at the record and found that after she changed her clothes, the originally empty streaming room suddenly had more than 100 visitors, and the number was still increasing. From time to time, a system notification popped up that a visitor had entered the room. System, what's going on? Jiang Pingji was confused. Only 10 viewers came to the live stream the night before. On the other side, the system was also confused by the sudden increase in popularity. However, to prevent Jiang Pingji from becoming a rooster, it immediately displayed its dignity as a system and figured out the source of the wave of viewers in a second or two. The viewers who watched the live stream yesterday took screenshots of the host's live stream and posted them on the public platform of their world, Baidu Tieba. Now, these tourists are attracted by the fame. The number of people in the channel was still increasing, and the system could not help but be speechless. Jiang Pingji reached out and poked at the bronze mirror that was not very clear. A viewer in the bullet screen said that he wanted to see the antique up close. She secretly communicated with the system. This is equivalent to a disguised channel for publicity. That's why these people followed the channel number to find us. Yeah, the system had a worried look on its face. It did not tell Jiang Pingji that in order to guide her to become a qualified warrior of the ancient language, it would reward the host with various live streaming tasks in the future. According to the degree of completion of the tasks, the host would be recommended by the live streaming platform of the dimensional world. Spurring the streamer to rack his brains to broadcast live, the system's behavior was equivalent to an investment, but the investment was small, the return was huge. These were the rigid rules of the game set by the system itself, and it could not be changed. With recommendations, the popularity of the live broadcast room would increase rapidly. Jiang Pingji quickly accepted the setting. Then let me guess. I guess the publicity gimmick is the video of me killing people, hunting, and promoting food? People like to watch a good show, so it's not surprising that it could attract so many people. The system, on the other hand, had a bitter taste in its mouth, but it could not speak of it. On the bullet screen, viewers kept asking if the video of him killing the bandits last night was real, and some people kept questioning it. AI. Some guru checked it and said that there is no trace of Photoshop in the video. Host is a liar. If she dared to kill so many people, the people's uncles would have taken her away. Don't rob Lu. I told you that it's a live broadcast of otaku fights. In ancient times, killing thieves would be regarded as heroes. Chives Bankai. I don't know which film studio it was shot in. It looks real, but it's actually faking its death. Host, stop lying. Only a fool would believe that there's such a thing as a multidimensional live broadcast. Those who are watching can go home now. Leave the channel to preserve your intelligence. User 1438, but don't you think it's weird? It seems like this channel number can be found on any live streaming platform. User 334, I tried it just now, and I can really find all of them. Panda, grilled fish, and YX are all available. I was scared to death. User 3356, she's stirring things up again. It must be a host who has gone crazy from wanting to be famous. Didn't the news say that a host had transmigrated? In the end, it was proven that the other party was lying. It's obviously fake. User 3838, crazy from wanting to be famous +1. These women who have undergone plastic surgery, in order to be famous, will call rich men husbands, sleep with them, dance, strip, scream, and have sex with a few men. What can't they do? It's disgusting. They'll open their legs as long as you give them money. User 5567, crazy from wanting to be famous +N. It's so ugly. Nowadays, any woman who can open her legs can come out for a live broadcast. The culture has been led astray by these sensationalists. I dare predict that when this host becomes famous, she'll definitely send gifts to rich men from thousands of miles away. User 9873, crazy from wanting to be famous +N. I'll bet 20 cents that she looks like an underage girl, which suits the tastes of some perverts. Jiang Pingji did not set a bullet screen limit for the audience, so there were all kinds of comments on the screen. Most of them were questioning, and some were even cursing. She expressed that it was the first time she had seen such a chaotic scene. It was as if a tank of dirty water had fallen from the sky. Do you want to limit the number and level of the bullet screen? The system saw that the number of viewers had risen to the 500 mark. Although it was happy to gain popularity, it was also worried that its host would hate the live broadcast even more because of the intensive abuse and ginseng-kok. When that time came, it would cry. The bullet screen was flying, but Jiang Pingji's reading speed was not just for show. The escalating abuse and comments refreshed her vocabulary. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, said suspiciously, "Why limit it? It's quite interesting, system, it was wrong." Its host was not an ordinary person at all. This level of ginseng-kok was not even enough to scratch an itch. However, it had forgotten that once its host bore a grudge, she would not be an ordinary person when she took revenge. Let them curse. To be honest, it's an eye-opener for me to learn how to curse people after growing up, Jiang Pingji said with amusement. I thought that when I took over the 7th Legion, it was already a hopeless rogue legion. I didn't expect it to pale in comparison. From her point of view, there was a technique to scold people. A good scolding person would not use a single dirty word, yet it could make the person angry to the point of having a brain hemorrhage. For someone to curse someone's ancestors and genitals at the drop of a hat, their mouth was too dirty, and they had no manners at all. If I were a scholar, maybe I could come up with a social research topic similar to the qualities of modern humans. Jiang Pingji's face did not show the slightest hint of anger. She did not even care about the audience. She had been humiliated to her grandmother's house. Those who were cursing her on the screen, which was getting dirtier and fiercer, had no idea that they had been humiliated in front of one of the main leaders of the Interstellar Human Alliance, the Legion Commander. Don't tell me you want me to scold you back for being unsightly? She never liked to talk too much when it came to things that could be solved with her fists. Of course, Under certain circumstances, she preferred to use words to attack people. If the system dared to say yes, Jiang Pingji felt that she would definitely find a way to strangle it to death. I'm in charge of my channel. The system said decisively, no, I think I can give them permission. If the other party's account was given permission, they might even change to another account. That was also a bit of popularity. Jiang Pingji immediately thought of the system's little scheme. She scolded it with a smile, "You're only so promising. That little bit of popularity can lure you away. I'm really afraid that one day you'll be abducted by a piece of sesame seed cake. Wait a little longer, the best is yet to come." After hearing that, the system's body trembled. No, why did it feel that something was wrong? No, host, don't tell me that you want to tear your own audience apart? You're supposed to tear apart the legal mother / the stepmother / the siblings / the weird relatives and elders, not the master of the audience. Chapter 29. Some of Jiang Pingji's words were like toilet paper. She threw them away after using them and let them go as if they were farts. The insults on the screen were getting more and more unbearable. Some angels could not take it anymore and started fighting with the trolls. Jiang Pingji's eyes were extremely sharp. She accurately found out the desire of some little angels to take a closer look at the layout of the ancient houses. While the others were fighting, she was not affected at all. Lu Lanting was the only legitimate son left in the family, so most of the family's resources were given to her. Lu Lanting's father was often away from home, so the study was Lu Lanting's. Even if her only legitimate brother wanted to borrow books, he had to ask for her permission. In that era, there was a clear distinction between legitimate sons and illegitimate sons. In some aristocratic families, illegitimate sons had a lower status than even servants. She heard that her brother had broken his head playing yesterday. She wondered how he was doing now. She did not need to show any concern for him, nor did she need to be courteous. All she had to do was ask about him. If she asked too much, people would find it strange. There was a rather large study room in the outer courtyard on the east side. The bookshelves were filled with all kinds of bamboo slips and booklets bound with precious bamboo paper. The handwriting on the booklets was exquisite. Even if Jiang Pingji knew little about calligraphy, she had to admit that the handwriting was very pleasing to the eye. In that era, books were an important indicator of a family's wealth, and the bamboo paper books were even more valuable. Suddenly, a bullet screen caught her attention. Yongyuan Tiantian, what a bug. What era did the host set? Why does she even have paper? Paper? Jiang Pingji snapped out of her thoughts and picked up the book. She used her thumb and forefinger to feel the paper. It was smoother than she had expected. In her opinion, this kind of paper was frighteningly rough. However, in ancient times, when paper first appeared, it was even more expensive than gold. In Lu Lanting's memory, the paper used by the nobles in the outside world was even rougher than this. It seemed that the Lu family was not as simple as it seemed. Jiang Pingji's interest was piqued, and her lips curled into a smile. It was probably because the scolding was too fierce that many people jumped to this channel to watch the fun. Jiang Pingji glanced at the number of viewers in the live stream, which was about to break the 1,000 mark. The system was probably so happy that it fainted. Maybe it was grinning all the way to its earlobes. Just then, a maid outside the study whispered, "Second Langed, Madam who wants to see you." Madam who? Jiang Pingji frowned slightly, as if she was wondering why the system was looking for her. The system, which was pretending to be dead, immediately said excitedly, "Ah, you're thinking too much. It's probably because of the servants. It just so happens that I was planning to go there as well." Jiang Pingji put the book back on the shelf, walked to the door, and said to the servant girl, "Lead the way, don't let Lady Di wait for too long." At this time, the bullet screen was filled with a few new and refreshing content. Who doesn't bathe? Did I hear it wrong? Second Langjun. Which dynasty is that? I almost heard it as Erlang Shen. Who doesn't bathe? Ha, I almost heard it wrong too. Big cousin's instant noodle hair popped up in my head. 23333. Jiang Pingji did not understand. She knew about Erlang Shun, who was a mythical character from ancient times. But what the hell was Big Cousin and Instant Noodle Hair? Murue Hukai. Host, where did you find such a classic beauty? She's so classy. I think she's much better than the wax figures in the museum. Can you zoom in and adjust the angle? I want to see closer. Zoom in, zoom in. I'm begging on my knees. Jiang Pingji frowned. Coincidentally, the maid missed a step, and half of her body leaned forward. She was about to fall. Be careful. Without thinking, she took a wrong step and appeared next to the maid in a flash. Her long arm wrapped around the maid's slender waist, and her other hand stretched to the maid's shoulder to stabilize the maid's smooth and slender shoulder. With a beautiful turn of her body, she dispelled the force of the fall and allowed the two of them to stand firmly. Be careful next time. Otherwise, if you miss a step, you might not only fall but also sprain your ankle. Jiang Pengji let go of the maid without hesitation, but she still looked gentle and concerned. She did not scold the maid at all. Thank you, second Langjun. The maid bowed in shock, afraid that Jiang Pingji would scold her. She did not expect Jiang Pingji to not only help her up, but also show concern for her. A clear stream of comments drowned out the scolding from before. Murue Hukai, I was so happy just now that I took a few pictures of classic beauties. I don't have to worry about changing the screensaver on my computer and phone, but I was caught off guard. Host, how could you tease such a beautiful woman? Yongyuan Tiankong, caught off guard. You're so lucky. Tudufeichio, 23333. When it comes to flirting with girls, you're the best. Don't snatch wa air Lu. I felt like my heart was about to explode. Let go of that host and let me do it. You're welcome. Hurry up and go to Madame Dai's. I don't know why she's looking for me. The maid was Madame Hu's servant, and she was usually rude to Lu Lanting. But today, for some reason, she felt an impulse. She tilted her head slightly and reminded Lu Lanting in a low voice. Second Langdon, it seems that the housekeeper in the manor has gone to Madame Hu's. Her family is making a scene, saying that Second Langjun has mistreated them. Tudufeichio, 233333333. I can guarantee that the maid has been mesmerized by the male hormones of the stream. Jiang Pingji glanced at the comments and smiled helplessly. Host V, a beautiful and cute girl has the right to be cared for. I can't bear to see her frown because she sprained her ankle. Suddenly, the comments exploded again, and a series of 666666666 flew by, wiping out the quarreling comments. Jiang Pingji was in a good mood, not only because of the clear stream of comments, but also because of the information that the maid had revealed. There were always people who were considerate enough to know that she needed a chicken to warn the monkeys, so they offered themselves to her. Tudufeichio, I have a bad feeling about this. Why do I feel like the host is about to make a big move? On the other hand, Madame Hu, who had just calmed down, secretly cursed Jiang Pingji in her heart. She did not know what she had done to this brat. She kept finding trouble with her. The older one had left to take up his post, and the younger one was still causing trouble. After taking a sip of tea, Madame Hu tilted her body with a headache. Her pale face showed signs of sickness. The housekeeper couple and their son were kneeling on the ground. Tears streamed down their cheeks as they told the housekeeper how loyal they were to the Lu residents. They didn't neglect the Lu residents at all. In terms of loyalty, they were definitely the top 3 in the Lu residents. Chapter 30. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. As for their son, they had been working hard for the Lu family all their lives, all for this. 30? Their baby? He had begged the housekeeper to give him a position as a guard, so that he could climb up the ranks step by step and have a place in the Lu family. They had not expected to be slandered by the second Langjun for no reason. Not only that, but the ignorant second Langjun had doubted their loyalty and had slandered them. The housekeeper had not stopped him and had allowed him to do whatever he wanted. That was why the couple had gone to Madame Hu in tears, hoping that she would seek justice for them. Of course, they were smart enough not to say anything bad about Jiang Pingji. Otherwise, they would be digging their own graves. As a concubine, Madam who had been in charge of the Lu family for many years. How could someone of her status like the legitimate son of the deceased first wife? But if the legitimate son was bullied by the servants, it would be no different than slapping her in the face. It was one thing to dislike the second Lang Jun, but it was another for the servants to humiliate the Lu family. Therefore, they had only hinted at one thing out of consideration. They had been with Father Lu since they were young, and Father Lu had entrusted them with important tasks before he passed away. To some extent, they represented Father Lu's reputation. What the second Lang Jun had done was disrespecting Father Lu. To put it more seriously, it was unfilial. From the previous dynasty to the current 5 dynasties, filial piety had always been emphasized. It was also an important criterion for an official to become an official. A filial person might not be able to become an official, but an unfilial person would never be able to become an official. Upon hearing this, Madame Butterfly's lazy expression turned serious, and she immediately sat up straight. Seeing this, the butler and his wife thought that they had touched Madame Butterfly's heart, and they immediately calmed down as if they had taken a tranquilizer. "You know quite a lot." Madame who slowly took a sip of tea. She did not put on any makeup and looked very clean. She did not look as glamorous and imposing as she usually did. Instead, she looked more lazy, as if she could not do anything and was not interested in anything. The housekeeper and his wife saw that they had a chance, so they cheered up and flattered her. "Master and Madam who care about us. We have been in the family for so many years and have been influenced by Master's literary talent. I feel like I have a few jars of ink." Madame whose eyes flickered and her neatly trimmed black eyebrows furrowed. "I am just a lowly concubine. Other than the late lady and the one in the eastern inner court, no one has the right to call me master." The butler and his wife continued to flatter Madame Hu and said, "Madam, you don't have to say that. Everyone knows that you and old master are childhood sweethearts. You are a match made in heaven. If Madame hadn't taken advantage of—" He lowered his head and spoke. Madame who had placed an exquisite embroidered screen in front of her, so the gloomy look in his eyes could not be seen. The maid knelt outside the door and whispered, "Madame Hu, the second Lang Jun is here." Madame Hu tightened her grip on the black wooden table beside her and said, "Let him in." Jiang Pingji could enter the second lady's room as she pleased, but she could not treat Madame Hu that way. Fortunately, Madame Hu and Lu Lanting did not interact much. They were strangers, so Jiang Pingji was not afraid of being recognized. The maid opened the door and sat down on Madame Hu's right. "May I know why you are looking for me?" She could see Madame Hu's face from her seat. Jiang Pingji, who was used to seeing beautiful women, was stunned the moment she saw Madame Hu. Madame Hu's appearance was not that of a noble lady, but it was what Jiang Pingji admired the most. Seductive but not seductive, gorgeous but not uncommon. She exuded a mature temperament and style from head to toe, causing others to feel a fatal temptation, yet because of that indescribable aggressiveness, they had no choice but to maintain a certain distance. Her eyebrows carried a hint of heroism, which made her look more spirited. There was a mole at the corner of her right eye. Her eyes were half closed, and her thick, long eyelashes moved with her breathing, as if she was trying to tickle someone's heart. All in all, this was a charming, mature, and beautiful woman who was born with the aura of a royal sister. This kind of beauty was not something that a little girl who was still wet behind the ears could disguise. Her natural charm, self-restraint, and bearing all required the accumulation of time to create such a stunner. There was no generation gap when it came to beauty, regardless of the era. If Madame Hu could amaze Jiang Pingji, it was only natural that the audience would fall for her. Yongyuan Tiangkong. What a beautiful lady. Mama asked me why my phone screen is so wet. Mui Huakai, */W***, so beautiful. I have a new screensaver. The beauty is so recognizable. Don't snatch wa Lu. Streamer, the moment I saw your dad's mistress, I decided to be friends with you. User 3216. Beautiful lady, I've already ruined a phone and a computer by licking them. User A11. Thank you for the OP's recommendation. It makes me want to recommend it too. There are so many beautiful girls in this live broadcast channel. It cured my face blindness. The barrage on the screen was like a fountain erupting, countless PR almost drowning the entire screen. Jiang Pingji did not look at it for long, but according to her memory, even if it was only for a moment, she could remember the smallest details with just a glance. The system did not have to deliberately feel for it to know that Jiang Pingji was happy and relaxed at that moment. This discovery made it a little confused. The system said, "I don't care if you're flirting with girls, but BG harem fights do not support the host playing GL side quests. Otherwise, I'm going to cry." Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. Sometimes, the system was cuter when it was quiet. Everyone loves beauty. It's just a hobby of mine. Who gave you the wrong impression that I might like girls? As Jiang Pingji chatted with the system, Madame Hu's slightly hoarse voice could be heard from above. "Where are you looking at, Erlang?" In fact, the seemingly lazy Madame Hu was also distracted for a moment. Of course, Madame Hu was in a daze not because she thought Jiang Pingji was beautiful, but because she saw Jiang Pingji's blurry figure walking slowly through the half-transparent screen. She had the illusion that an old friend had returned, and she almost lost her mind. But she quickly hid it, and Jiang Pingji happened to look away at the same time, so no one noticed. Jiang Pingji smiled gently, like a piece of warm jade. "I'm looking at Aunt Dai, whom I haven't seen for a long time." Everyone was bewildered when they heard this. She was the legitimate son of the family, so why would she tease her stepmother? But Jiang Pingji did not say it without thinking. According to her observations, Madame Hu knew Lu Lanting's secret. Chapter 31. Madame Hu had never liked Lu Lanting. When she was in charge of the Lu residence, she did not deliberately bully the son of the first wife, but she was not on good terms with him either. They would only meet 3 to 5 times a year, but they would only exchange a dozen words. She was very cold. Under such circumstances, Madame Hu knew Lu Lanting's biggest secret, but no one knew about it. Either Madame Hu had other concerns, or the lady did not hate her as much as Lu Lanting thought she did. Madame Hu's interest was piqued when she heard Jiang Pingji's unexpected words. "What did you see?" "People are like fine wine. Their fragrance increases with age. You haven't aged after so many years, and you're even more charming now." As Jiang Pingji spoke, she heard a few gasps in the room. Everyone's mind was probably filled with comments like, "How dare the second Lang Jun flirt with his stepmother in public? What the F***ck?" Madame Hu twirled her handkerchief and chuckled. "Since when did you become so sweet? I almost took your words seriously. Concubine Dai is a natural beauty, it's hard for her to abandon herself. If others praise her, it's naturally true." The mother and son chatted with each other, and they even ignored the housekeeper and his wife who were kneeling below them. They seemed to be having a good time talking to each other. Suddenly, Madame Hu mentioned the mole at the corner of her eye and asked Jiang Pingji if she was beautiful. Jiang Pingji did not understand, but she answered honestly, "It's the finishing touch. If it's missing, it'll be less charming." The gasps in the room died down. Jiang Pingji frowned. Had she broken a taboo? At that moment, a viewer who seemed to know a thing or two about physiognomy posted a comment. "Feng Shui Master Gaodu, host, you've broken a taboo. That mole has an ominous meaning. It could bring bad luck to your husband and children." Jiang Pingji was speechless. Unexpectedly, Madame Hu, who was supposed to be angry at being stepped on, smiled coquettishly. "You have a sweet mouth, just like your mother." Mother? Madame Hu knew Lu Lanting's mother? From her tone, it sounded like they were not as hostile as the rumors said. While she was puzzled, Madame Hu leaned against the table and looked at the butler and his wife behind the screen. "I heard from them that you privately handed the guards over to the butler to deal with and had him take them to the magistrate's office. You even wanted to search their houses? Is this true?" Madame Dai changed the topic. Her expression was cold, as if she wasn't the one who had been chatting and laughing with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji sat down with a straight face and said, "That's true. But did they bring their whole family to bother you? He is, after all, an old man arranged by your father." Even if you want to punish him, you should be cautious to prevent others from gossiping. As soon as Madame Dai spoke, the manager and his wife's gloomy faces immediately brightened. They even seemed a little happy. It's just punishing a few servants who made a mistake. Do I have to be held back by them? It was true that they were the elders left behind by their father, but this did not mean that they were taking advantage of their seniority. Moreover, I would like to ask you, concubine Dai, is it worse to punish a servant who made a mistake, or is it worse to punish a servant who takes advantage of his seniority but ends up being restrained? The former would be criticized for not being strict enough and having a servant, but the latter would be a complete disgrace to the aristocrats in Hejian County. Everything needs evidence. Even if they are servants in the manor, they still need to follow the rules. Madame Hu smiled faintly. Jiang Pingji secretly took a deep breath. She was not used to the way things were handled in this era. If it was in the past, she would have been lucky not to have slapped them to death. Now they wanted evidence? He was tired of living and wanted to hang himself. She had wanted to show some mercy and sell them to a faraway place. What she did not see, she would not be sad. Now, she was digging her own grave. Housekeeper, go to the kitchen in the inner courtyard and find a servant girl. I don't know what she looks like, but she has a unique characteristic. She might be sick today, or she might be in low spirits and is forcing herself to work, but she is absent-minded. Jiang Pingji's words were strange, but no one except her noticed that the servant kneeling beside the housekeeper and his wife had his legs trembling and fists clenched. She snorted coldly, and her eyes were filled with killing intent. You want to use evidence to prove yourself? Very well, I will use evidence to cut off your family's escape route. The housekeeper took the order and left. Jiang Pingji held the sandalwood fan in her hand and opened and closed it intermittently. Her lips were curled up with a hint of bloodlust. The bullet screen suddenly quietened down. At that moment, the number of viewers in the streaming room had quietly climbed to the 1,500 mark, and there were even more than 300 followers. This meant that when Jiang Pingji started streaming in the future, these followers would receive the live stream notification immediately. Then, based on this, they would accumulate a fixed group of viewers who would watch the live stream. The system looked at the number and was overjoyed. Not long after, the housekeeper brought a servant girl in coarse gray clothes over. Leng Jun, the girl is here. After that, the housekeeper knelt beside Jiang Pingji and whispered in her ear, when we found her, she was trying to kill herself. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes and said to Madame Hu, Lanting, I have a favor to ask. Can I borrow your servant girl? Sure. Madame Hu looked at the scene with curiosity and interest. She wanted to know what Jiang Pingji was going to do. However, in the next second, Jiang Pingji's words almost angered her. Bring the servant girl down for a body check. See if there are any signs of her being violated within a short period of time. Before she could finish her sentence, Madame Hu slammed her hand on the short table beside the table. The sound echoed throughout the room. Bastard! When Madame Hu slapped him with her palm, or rather, when Jiang Pingji said those words, the guard was already at a loss of what to do. Without looking at anything else, just by looking at his reaction, everyone vaguely realized something and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. How could a servant in the outer courtyard have an affair with a servant girl in the inner courtyard? The inner courtyard was a forbidden area for men, except for Lu Longjuan's father, the second Langjun, and a young concubine. Even if the housekeeper wanted to enter, he had to be watched. Furthermore, it had to be an urgent matter, and there was a time limit. Yesterday, I accidentally ran into a scoundrel. Madame Hu sent people to look for me, but these daring servants went to brothels, and brothels. Not only did they fool around with prostitutes, but they also went to the gambling house. When they came back in the middle of the night, they snuck into the inner courtyard and raped a servant girl in the kitchen who happened to wake up at night. The inner courtyard is where Mother, Madame Hu, and my sister sleep. If he counted on those idiots to save Lu Lanting, he would be dead by now. That's not enough to deal with this animal? The housekeeper and his wife widened their eyes, but when they saw their son's flustered expression, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. It was that lowly servant girl who seduced me. It wasn't me, the servant hurriedly denied it. He even straightened his body and pushed away the servant girl who was kneeling beside him, panicking as if his secret had been exposed. What a joke! A servant who sold his assets to molest and humiliate a servant girl in the manner was definitely going to die. He could not admit it. Chapter 32. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Jiang Pengji stood up and looked at the servant coldly. You usually rely on your parents in the Lu manner to act like a tyrant. That's why you can beg the patrolling servants to let you into the inner court. It's a pity that you saw the servant girl and suddenly had evil intentions. You knocked her out and acted like a beast. There are still scratches under your sleeves from her struggle. How do you explain yourself? The servant subconsciously took a step back and held his wrists tightly. At first, Jiang Pengji thought it was an attempt at coercion. After all, in ancient times, any servant who dared to do so was a typical example of someone who didn't care about their life. They could be beaten to death. Moreover, he had been with the prostitutes before, so the traces left behind made her misjudge. But when the housekeeper brought the servant girl in, she found that the situation was more serious than she thought. The couple didn't expect that their son would make such a big mistake. They would definitely be beaten to death with sticks. Under the gaze of his parents, the servant's eyes became bloodshot. He panicked and was at a loss. Seeing that Jiang Pengji was not far from him, and thinking that he was going to die, he suddenly had an evil intention. I'll fight you to the death. Jiang Pengji skillfully dodged to the side. The room suddenly became chaotic. No one expected him to be so daring. Unable to catch Jiang Pengji, the strong and well-trained servant immediately targeted Madame Hu. She was a woman who was sick not long ago, so she was the easiest to deal with. But Jiang Pengji immediately realized his intention. She slapped him in the face with her sandalwood fan. Taking advantage of the moment when he closed his eyes, Jiang Pengji lifted her leg and kicked him in the leg, forcing him to fall forward. Slap. Jiang Pengji used the closed sandalwood fan to slap his face. He didn't know how much strength she used, but the slap made him fall to the ground. From his temple to the bridge of his nose, there was a swollen red mark that was 2 fingers wide. One of his eyes flowed with tears of blood. You've dirted my fan. She threw the blood-stained sandalwood fan to the side of the servant who was curled up on the ground, covering his eyes and howling in pain. The whole thing happened in the blink of an eye. In the end, Jiang Pengji ordered her men to bring the couple in charge under control as well. Not only was the room silent, but the entire bullet screen was also blank. It felt unprecedentedly peaceful. Housekeeper, have you searched their house? How much money did they embezzle from the manor? Report to the magistrate court according to the actual number. Remember, when you send him over, feed him a bowl of mute medicine. As for him, gather all the servants and let everyone see what it means to be beaten to death. Concubine Dai was frightened just now. Remember to get a doctor to prescribe some medicine to calm the nerves. The atmosphere in the room was heavy and frightening. The housekeeper was used to seeing storms, so he was very receptive to it. Lang Jun, I've checked it out. Speaking of this, the old butler felt a little embarrassed. He didn't expect that someone would be able to embezzle so much money under his nose. According to the current laws, if the butler and his wife were taken to the magistrate's office, they would eventually be sentenced to death. However, Lang Jun had really grown up. He could still remember to be considerate in this kind of angry situation. After all, they were old people from the Lus. Who knew how much the couple knew about the affairs of the manor? They couldn't be released unless they were mute. At first, Madame Hu was really frightened by the incident, but it didn't last long. Her attention quickly shifted from panic to the figure reflected on the screen. She was dazed, and she thought that the person she was familiar with would pass through the screen and walk towards her. However, Jiang Pengji's voice brought her back to reality. She had lost interest in it, so she responded in a low voice and asked the servant to help her back to her room. After a moment of silence, the bullet screen suddenly exploded again. Some of the content was doubtful, but most of them were still in disbelief. Some even criticized Jiang Pengji for being too cruel and vicious. They were more and more inclined to believe that the live stream was real. Wei Sui Yue, I believe that the streamer has really traveled through time. But as a modern person, where are your values? You destroyed a person's eyes so easily and wanted to beat him to death in public. That's too cruel. Most of the bullet screen was similar. Most of them were criticizing Jiang Pingji for being cold-blooded and cruel. She secretly curled her lips and asked the system to put her words in the center. Host V, who told you that I'm from the modern era? How could she, a person who had lived on the edge of a knife, fought in space for more than 30 years, and directly or indirectly killed tens of millions of people? She had her own way of doing things and judging. As long as she didn't cross the line, everything was fine. Crossed the line? Then I'm sorry. Host V, let me introduce myself. I am Jiang Pingji, the commander of the 7th Corps of the Interstellar Human Federation. I have the rank of general. Maybe after I die, I will be given the title of honorary marshal. According to your timeline, I belong to the future of humanity about 10 or 20,000 years in the future. As she spoke, she stepped on the wooden clogs under her feet and heard the rhythmic clacking of the clogs. Host V, this is not the peaceful era you are used to, and there is no such thing as human rights. Bloody scenes like today will only increase in the future. You and I are people of two different generations. It is fate that brought us together. If you're curious, I welcome you. If you don't, I won't send you off. The system, damn it. She was not only the most difficult host it had ever met, but also the most famous host the audience had ever met. The system was so angry that the 3 corpses god was about to explode. If you do this, you'll make everyone leave in anger, understand? Jiang Pengji secretly curled her lips and said with certainty, no, don't worry. The number of people will only increase. The system did not understand, but Jiang Pengji was too lazy to explain. A host from tens of thousands of years in the future streaming in the ancient era that seemed to be thousands of years ago, and it was real. Was the gimmick not big enough? The system quickly realized that the number of people watching the live broadcast was slowly climbing towards 2,000, and it was getting closer and closer to the 2,500 mark. But why was there so many people watching the live broadcast, but she did not even see any lollipops being tipped? How old are you this year? Jiang Pengji took a flat wooden stick painted with red paint from a servant's hand and walked to the unfortunate maidservant. The maidservant wanted nothing more than to hide in a hole in the ground. If it weren't for the butler who had arranged for someone to keep an eye on her, she would have found a chance to kill herself. I am 13 this year. Although this maidservant was only 13 years old, she had matured quite early. She looked like a slender and elegant girl of 15 or 16. Jiang Pengji handed the wooden stick to her. Under the servant girl's frightened and confused eyes, Jiang Pengji slightly squatted down and looked her in the eye. She used her other hand to pinch the servant girl's jaw. He is tied up and can't move. You can beat him until he is dead. If you can't beat him to death, I will spare his life. The gathered servants did not know what had happened, but they could not help but gasp when they heard Jiang Pengji's words. Jiang Pengji did not care about the looks of others. Instead, she asked the servant girl coldly, "Do you want to beat him or not?" The servant girl's breathing was a bit rapid. Her eyes full of hatred fell on the red stick in Jiang Pengji's hand. She suddenly became more determined, and her breathing became more rapid. Thank you, Lang Jun. Chapter 33. Jiang Pengji sneered and looked at all the stewards and servants who were watching the execution. She said, "Watch until the person stops breathing. Otherwise, no one is allowed to leave, and no one is allowed to look away. But if anyone dares to spread rumors about what happened here today, they will be punished the same way. They will be beaten to death. I won't point out those who left their posts last night. You can go and receive your punishment after the execution. Are you bullying the Liu family for not having any male servants? Then let's just watch until everyone is scared." The housekeeper watched from the side. He sighed and said in a low voice, "Second Langjun, isn't this a little too?" The Lius were a family of scholars. Whatever they did, they had to pay attention to their demeanor and face. Dirty things like this were usually left to the subordinates to deal with. Jiang Pingji only needed to devise strategies and control the overall situation. However, when the housekeeper thought of Lu Lanting's mother, he felt that it was not unacceptable. Perhaps second Longjuan's ruthlessness under his gentle appearance was due to his late wife. Jiang Pingji played with her new fan and said, "If I didn't do this, that girl would have died. She is a servant of the Lu family, not an orphan. She has been wronged here, and she has the right to ask for some interest from her creditors. Besides, father has not been here all these years. Although the housekeeper has done his best to take care of the Lu family, he is old and not as energetic as he was when he was young. It's inevitable that he has made mistakes and encouraged these people to do bad things. I can't guarantee that everyone will be as loyal as the housekeeper. The inner court is not a place for outsiders to come and go as they please." That servant had a loose tongue, or rather he liked to talk nonsense. Jiang Pingji could totally imagine what would happen if he got drunk one day, or if he got complacent and told his friends about her forcing herself on the maidservants in the inner court. Then the whole Hejian county would know about it. By then, the reputation of all the women in the Lus would be ruined. If he didn't die, who would? The housekeeper was still worried that after today's incident, the entire Hejian county would know that the second Langjun of the Lu family was a cruel and merciless person. At this time, the sun was not too strong, and it was a little cold when it shone on their bodies. However, this kind of cold was not as cold as their hearts. The maidservant was petite and exquisite, but at this time, she used all her strength to raise the wooden stick and hit the tightly bound man. The other party was in pain and wanted to roll away, so she raised the wooden stick and chased after him. She hit where it hurt, and the dull thuds echoed in everyone's hearts. Not only did the servants who were forced to watch felt their bodies turn cold and their legs tremble, but the people watching the live broadcast on the other side of the screen also couldn't take it. Some of the weaker ones even felt a wave of nausea rise in their throats. Even so, the number of viewers in the live broadcast slowly climbed to 3,000, and there were still many people waiting in line outside. There was a limit to the number of viewers in the streaming room. For a new streamer like Jiang Pingji, the maximum number of viewers was only 3,000. If she wanted to increase the limit, she had to upgrade the streamer's level with the system. It took 100,000 popularity points to upgrade from a first-level streamer to a second-level streamer, and Jiang Pingji's current account only had 1532 popularity points. The housekeeper said shamefully, "It's my fault. I've failed the Lord's trust and ruined your reputation in the future. If it were not for the fact that he did not notice the situation in the manner and did not take precautions, his second Langjun would not have used such a fierce and merciless method." Jiang Pingji was very confident about that. "Don't worry. No one will dare to say anything. Maybe they will even praise me for being decisive in managing the family." If she did not have such a method, the gentry whose daughters had been kidnapped would be the ones worried. How could a person who did not even dare to hit the servants in the family, and who was restrained by the other party's twisted logic, have the ability to protect himself and the noble girls in that kind of dangerous situation? The housekeeper was speechless. From the beginning to the end, it took more than an hour. The people present and the viewers in the streaming room were forced to watch for more than an hour. The ground was stained with large patches of blood. White brain matter and broken bones were smeared on the ground, and there were some pieces of flesh scattered everywhere. The servants in the courtyard were so scared that they did not dare to make a sound. A few of them felt a slight numbness in their lower abdomens and a warm current flowed down their legs. They were so scared that they could not control themselves. No one could have a clear conscience. They were afraid that the things they had done in the past would be found out and punished. The viewers behind the screen felt that their worldview had been forcibly reshaped. Jiang Pingji acted as if nothing had happened. She leisurely walked forward in her wooden clogs and took the wooden stick that the servant girl almost lost her grip on. She held the servant girl's hand and squeezed it. "I've already asked someone to boil medicine for you. Remember to soak your arm in it after you go down. Otherwise, you will be so sore that you can't lift your hand tomorrow. Look at this pair of hands. They look thin and weak, but they can still avenge you, can't they?" Remember, if anyone humiliates you in the future, you have to remember what happened just now. You can only avenge yourself if you're alive. If you're dead, you'll always be the perpetrator. The servant girls of the Lus are not clay figurines that anyone can bully. The maidservant relied on the anger in her heart to keep herself from collapsing. Now that she heard Jiang Pingji's words, she felt an indescribable sense of grievance. She knelt at Jiang Pingji's feet and rested her forehead on the back of her folded hands. Her shoulders trembled and her spine arched as she cried silently. Jiang Pingji sighed softly and asked someone to clean up the corpse. Then she beat up all the servants. In the inner courtyard on the west side of the courtyard, Madame who had just woken up from her nap, heard the report from her personal servant. Did you say that second Langjun really ordered someone to beat her to death? Madame who sat up on the soft mattress. A perceptive servant girl immediately fetched a table beside her so that she could lean on it more comfortably. Or did the servant girl beat her to death herself? The servant girl shuddered as she recalled what had just happened. Yes, and second Langjun gave the staff to the servant girl himself. The staff was much taller than the maidservant, yet she was able to use such a thick staff to beat the servant to death. Madame who didn't think much of it. She said, "What's so strange about that? Women aren't born to be bullied. Once they have hatred in their hearts and they hate someone to the core, they'll take revenge even if it's with their last breath." Madame who seemed to recall something and said, "Her fierce and decisive temper is more like her mother's than her father's." Lu's father had been handsome and exquisite when he was young, like an immortal who had walked out of a painting. His temperament was as gentle as jade, and his manner of speaking was modest and polite. No matter who he was talking to, he could make the other party feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. Of course, this guy had grown up drinking black ink. The cleaner his clothes were, the darker the schemes in his stomach were. When it came to matters that could be solved with words, the man could not even walk 2 steps without panting. Lu Lanting's mother, on the other hand, was the complete opposite of him. She had a face that made people worry about her. On the surface, she looked like a noble lady, but behind the scenes, she had a fiery personality. She also liked to cause trouble, and no one could understand what was going on in her head. Their daughter was a combination of their characteristics. She looked like her father, but her fierce and violent nature was like her mother's. But, Madame who took a sip of tea. Second Langjun is smarter than his mother. Lu Lanting was not her mother. If she got into trouble, there was no Lu she to clean up for her. It was better for her to rely on herself. The servant girl did not understand. But, Madam, second Langjun's actions are bad for his reputation. Chapter 34. The maid did not dare to say anything else. She had served Madame who for many years, but she still did not understand the lady's temper. It could be said that she liked second Langjun, but she secretly liked to make things difficult for people. She was also indifferent when she met people. After all, he was the only legitimate son left by the late Madame. Madame who had pestered the old master to become his concubine, did not like second Langjun. However, the maid did not think that Madame who hated second Langjun. The most obvious thing was that Madame who had been managing the factories left behind by the late Madame for the past few years. The profits of the factories had increased over the years. Some of them were even a few times more than the Lu family's businesses, but Madame who had no intention of taking them for herself. It seemed that she was sincerely helping second Langjun take care of the businesses and return them to the rightful owner. Other than that, Madame who had fainted the day before when she heard that second Langjun had been kidnapped. To be honest, she was getting more and more confused about the situation of this small Lu residence. Madame whose maid could not understand the Lu family, and Jiang Pingji was also getting dizzy. Jiang Pingji planned to read all the books in the study in order to understand more about this era. With her memory, it would not take long. Other than a few books that were bound with paper, most of the books were made of heavy bamboo slips. However, before she could see much, Takshu, the maidservant who was serving her, said that this month's rations had been delivered. Allowance. Jiang Pingji searched through Lu Lanting's memory and vaguely knew that it was like pocket money. However, when she saw the pile of items in her room, she realized that she had been wrong. The allowance was not just a box of silver or copper coins, but also daily necessities. There were a few sets of the 4 treasures of the study, a dozen bolts of cloth for making new clothes, a few pieces of soft fur, a dozen boxes of incense powder, a few stacks of floral paper, and 5 pieces of bamboo paper. In this era where paper was more valuable than gold, Lu Lanting's monthly allowance was 5 pieces of bamboo paper. Thinking of this, Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes and said in surprise, "This month's paper looks more special than the previous month's." Taksha did not suspect anything. Instead, she had an expression that said, "Second Lang Jun has good eyesight." She secretly pinched the rather heavy purse in her sleeve. According to the owner, the craftsmen have experimented and adjusted it several times. The toughness of the bamboo paper is better than before, and the texture is smoother to the touch. Jiang Pingji went over to touch it. The paper was indeed better than the ones on the bookshelf. However, this was not the main point of her concern. Although paper-making technology existed in this era, it was not mature. The quality of the paper produced was not good, and it was not widely used. Therefore, good paper was still expensive. Paper suitable for painting was even more expensive and rare. She found a detail in Lu Lanting's memory. In other families, even the most important children in the family could only get half a blade of paper per month. Moreover, the quality of the paper was not good. Most people used bamboo slips to write. Lu Lanting's monthly supply exceeded the quota, and he even carefully selected the best quality batch. Unless Jiang Pingji had an idea. It's not easy to make paper in the workshop. 5 blades of paper per month is a little too much. Taksha did not know that she was testing her. She said naturally, the paper-making workshop was left to Second Lang Jun by the late wife. As long as Second Lang Jun needs it, even if they don't sell paper to the outside world, they can't be short of money. There is no reason for you to save money for them. Paper workshop. As expected, the veins on Jiang Pingji's forehead twitched. Takshu secretly glanced at Jiang Pingji. She could not help but heave a sigh of relief when she saw that Jiang Pingji's expression was relaxed. Most of the servants in the Lu residence already knew that Lang Jun had ordered his servants to be beaten to death. In the past, they didn't really like Lang Jun, who usually didn't have much of a presence and had a soft personality. However, after witnessing his ruthlessness, they all became obedient. The owner of the workshop had even sent over the monthly quota 2 days in advance. He even gave Taksha some benefits and asked her to put in a good word for him. The workshop was a lucrative job, and the owner did not want to lose it for no good reason. The scale of the workshop was neither too big nor too small, and it produced a limited amount of paper each month. The aristocratic families consumed countless amounts of paper each year. The aristocratic families and merchants would secretly order the bamboo paper produced by the workshop. If they were late, they would not be able to sell it no matter how high the price was. In order to get their share of the annual quota, they had to bribe the owner to get a bigger share. That was something that happened almost every year. It seems that the owner has given you a lot of benefits. It's rare for you to speak up for someone else. Jiang Pingji's gaze fell on Taksha's right hand, which was hidden under her sleeve. Taksha's face was pale. Jiang Pingji smiled and comforted her. "It's not easy being a girl. Don't be too afraid. The owner has given you benefits. As long as it's not too much, just accept it. You are my servant." The system secretly complained. If she really wasn't afraid, she wouldn't have said it so bluntly. Jiang Pingji had gotten the clue she wanted. She secretly rubbed her forehead. She was even more certain that there was something wrong with Lu Lanting's mother. Yongyuan Tianjian, why do I feel like there's another woman other than the streamer? Murue Huakai, really? Maybe the streamer can go and have a historic reunion. User 3216, the person above is too naive. There's no knowing what's in a person's heart. Be careful not to get stabbed. User A11, why do I feel like if there's another woman from another world, the streamer should be merciful if she doesn't stab her to death? Tudu Feichio, I agree with User A11. The streamer's fighting power is at its peak. Jiang Pingji pondered as she scrolled through the bullet screen for inspiration. Then she heard Taksha's voice. "Second Lang Jun, are you still going to the family school tomorrow?" Taksha helped her tidy up the rations and put them in different boxes. Mr. Wei sent someone to ask for leave yesterday. He said that he hasn't fully recovered from his cold and needs to rest for another 3 to 5 days. He doesn't want to spread the illness to Lang Jun. Lu Lanting's teacher was sick and had asked for leave for 3 days. Jiang Pingji did not expect him to still be ill. The family school? Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows. It was a place where children went to school. As far as she could remember, Lu Lanting did not like going there. Most of the time, she hired a teacher to teach at home. Jiang Pingji wanted to refuse, but many viewers wanted to take a closer look at the ancient family school. Jiang Pingji swallowed her words and said, "I'll go tomorrow. I haven't been to the family school for a long time, and I don't know what it's like now." Takshu, remember to ask the butler to prepare some rations for Mr. Wei so that he can rest in peace. Chapter 35. No matter what era it was, a child's education was always a huge expense. Even a landowning family like the Lu family couldn't guarantee that every member of the family was a wealthy local tyrant. Some of the Lu family members who had fallen from grace could only barely maintain their dignity. For a family with an average income, the more children they had, the poorer they were. While they appeared to be doing well on the surface, their quality of life was very worrying. How could they afford to pay for their children's education when they could barely afford to eat? Therefore, the emergence of the family school greatly eased the burden on their children's education. The tutors and tutors were all paid for by the family. Many people only needed to send their children to the family school. There were 2 free meals a day, and if the children could not finish it, they could take it away. Every month, the family school would provide them with clean brushes, ink, and bamboo slips. In ancient times, the cost of going to school was very high. The poor could not afford to go to school, and their chances of making a name for themselves were much lower than those of the gentry. The gentry occupied most of the resources, and they were willing to invest those resources in their children. They trained them to read and write so that they would have a sense of belonging to the family. When they grew up and made a name for themselves, the resources would be invested in the education of the next generation. The birth and continuation of a gentry family could not be separated from this virtuous cycle of growth. Jiang Pingji held the scroll. Because of Lu Lanting's memory, reading and recognizing the words were not difficult, but writing was a problem. Not only are the clothes anti-human, but even the writing tools are anti-human. Jiang Pingji tried to hold the brush as if she was facing a formidable enemy, but the soft tip of the brush did not listen to her. What she wrote was like a weird pile of excrement. She tried a few times to no avail, so she threw the pen away and destroyed the shameful evidence. However, it was rare to see Jiang Pingji make a fool of herself. The bullet screen was flooded with 23,333 comments that almost blinded her. Misha Warrior Ein, good and evil will always be repaid. The heavens have their own cycle. Look up if you don't believe me. Who will the heavens forgive? Hashtag Picknose one sorcerer girl offing. Woman, beg me. I can teach you. Hashtag Grimace one host v. No. Jiang Pingji muttered to herself, I shouldn't have agreed to go to that damned family school. Takshu, the maidservant, heard the commotion outside and quietly poked her head in. She asked, Is something the matter, second Langjun? It's nothing, I accidentally dropped the pen. Her lips were almost pressed into a straight line. She looked at the pen lying on the ground as if she was looking at her mortal enemy. Amidst the mocking comments, she sighed and squatted down to pick up the pen. The audience who was rejected did not seem to see Jiang Pingji's rejection. They copied and pasted a large section of the basic essentials of calligraphy from somewhere. Jiang Pingji's eyebrows were knitted into a tight knot. Her right hand mimicked Lu Lanting's grip on the brush in her memory. Then, she combined the basic essentials of the brush strokes on the bullet screen. Her hand trembled as she tried to get closer to Lu Lanting's handwriting. Lu Lanting's memories were like supplementary materials to her. As long as she did not purposely search through them, her memories and emotions would not be affected. However, there was a downside. Jiang Pingji's habits and actions were basically her own when she was not purposely hinting at them. Even if she purposely imitated Lu Lanting, it would still be easy for people who were close to her to see through her. There was not much in the study, but there was an abundance of bamboo paper. She did not mind using it to practice calligraphy. Lu Lanting could only use up half a month's worth of bamboo paper. She saved up the rest and stored them in boxes. At first, she was not used to writing with a brush. The tip of the brush was too soft, and if she was not careful, her handwriting would become very ugly. But after a few tries, she gradually got the hang of it. She used her ability to control her arm strength and slowly gained experience. After practicing on a few pieces of paper, her handwriting was 50% similar to Lu Lanting's. It made sense. She had practiced according to Lu Lanting's memory. Of course, it was similar. The audience watched in disbelief as the streamer's handwriting changed from lying down to standing up. Why did she become a streamer if she was so good at learning? Some of the audience members who had learned calligraphy told them how difficult it was for them to practice calligraphy. Sometimes, their arms and wrists were so swollen that they could not move. They complained, "Streamer, you're not human." Although she had learned some things, her handwriting habits could not be changed in a short period of time. Jiang Pingji looked at the sky outside and placed a pile of bamboo slips on the table. She then took out some bamboo paper and began to copy. Misha Zhanyuan, illiterate people? What are these words? Pijing Zhanjian, I can vaguely recognize that the streamer is copying the Analects of Confucius. I remember that ancient books were very expensive. If the streamer's family has a collection of Analects of Confucius, they must be well off and have a high social status. Jiang Pingji saw this while she was copying and suddenly replied. Host V, yes, the Lu family is doing well. If I were a commoner, I would probably be in a bandit stronghold, broadcasting how to tear people apart with my bare hands. Or I would be traversing the mountains and teaching you how to survive in the wild. Jianluo Zenshan, I can understand that you're broadcasting how to survive in the wild, but what the hell is tearing bandits apart with your bare hands? Host V, this ignorant ancient era was very chaotic. Hejian County is considered orderly, but there are still many bandits nearby who specialize in robbing passing merchants for a living. A lone woman is simply a fat piece of meat for them. So, if the bandits came to her, Jiang Pingji would not let them go, because they would not let her go. Just like what happened in the bandit stronghold, those bandits would not let go of so many delicate noble ladies. In their eyes, they were just tools to vent their lust. They were not human beings. What was the use of talking about morality and righteousness with them? What was the use of begging? The only thing that could be of use was one's own brain and hands. Host V, you can either be humiliated by dozens of men in the bandit's stronghold and become their tool to vent their lust. If you're lucky, you can get pregnant. Maybe you can live for a few more days and give birth to a child who will become a bandit in the future. Or, you can only raise your sword and let them die. Jiang Pingji's pen paused for a moment before she put it down again and continued. Her expression softened a little. Host V, I know there are many things that you can't accept, but you're just spectators. I'm a participant. They're just spectators. If they don't want to watch, they can just leave. It's just a matter of time. But she, Jiang Pingji, had to walk her own path in life instead of relying on these onlookers. After copying the contents of the bamboo slips, Jiang Pingji planned to revise Lu Lanting's other skills. At that moment, the silent system suddenly spoke. Chapter 36. Jiang Pingji frowned and asked, What do you mean? The system said, It's something like a skill book that allows you to quickly learn a certain skill. The system shop has just released it. At that moment, Jiang Pingji saw a few moving icons on the side of the huge streaming screen in front of her. However, she had always been wary of this unknown system, and she was not that curious. She did not study it at all. Opening the system's shop menu, a brand new interface immediately popped up. There were many product icons on it. zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, embroidery, sewing, tea-making, swordsmanship, saber techniques, leg techniques, horse riding. There were 4 different labels behind each skill: elementary, intermediate, advanced, and ascendant. 4 different levels of skills required different amounts of popularity points. The highest level, Ascend, required a massive amount of popularity points. Fortunately, the basic entry requirement was 1,000 popularity points. With her current popularity points, she could easily exchange for 1. Jiang Pingji furrowed her brows. If she exchanged for these and learned them, would she get a beginner's ability? The system said, I saw that the host was having a hard time learning how to write just now, so I used my personal treasury to open up the shop interface for the host. If the system could be concretized, she felt that she could see the system's fawning face saying, hurry up and praise me. Jiang Pingji laughed to herself and said, I think you're just eyeing the popularity points in my account, right? The system was non-committal. Popularity points were gold and silver to it. If it could earn a sum of money from doing business, why not? Jiang Pingji looked at the tempting items on the interface of the store. She rolled her eyes and closed it in the blink of an eye. I think calligraphy is quite interesting. It's good for me to practice it slowly. You should continue looking at the popularity points in my account. F***CK. Jiang Pingji said naturally, good steel should be used on the blade's edge. It's useless to exchange it now. It's better to save it for when it's needed someday. Who knows, it might be of unexpected use. The system snorted. There's no need to be so thrifty. Just open a live stream every day. As long as the maximum number of viewers reaches 3,000, you'll get at least 1,500 popularity points a day. That's more than enough to exchange for a book. There's no need to work so hard to learn. If he was rewarded by a nouveau riche, he would accumulate popularity points even faster. Jiang Pingji looked as if she had seen through him. In the end, you're still trying to entice me to stream diligently, aren't you? However, the live stream limit is always 3,000 viewers. Hey, don't tell me that I need to exchange popularity points to increase the limit. The host is truly wise and mighty. The system was almost about to wag its tail. A level 1 host requires 100,000 popularity points to advance to level 2. As the host's level increased, the maximum number of viewers in the room would also increase. Naturally, the speed at which he accumulated popularity points would also increase. Jiang Pingji secretly rubbed her brows. The system's tricks were too deep. The host can only upgrade his level with popularity points? The system thought for a moment and said, not really. There is another channel, but it depends on face. As a perfect plain live broadcast system, there were naturally many ways to play it. It was impossible to only have a single boring live broadcast. Jiang Pingji guided him, what channel? The system has 4 live broadcast modes. The first is the free live broadcast mode. Just like what the host is doing now, you can broadcast whatever you want. The second is the semi-interactive live broadcast mode. The host selects some live broadcast content for the audience to vote. Then, the live broadcast content with the highest number of votes. After the host completes the live broadcast, depending on the audience's satisfaction, the host can obtain 3 levels of gold, silver, and bronze treasure chests. After opening the treasure chests, the host can obtain random rewards, including a free card to upgrade the host's level. Jiang Pingji listened and nodded to herself, then signaled for the system to continue. The second is the fully interactive live broadcast mode. The audience selects the live broadcast content and then selects the items to vote. Of course, the content must be within the scope stipulated in the contract. It cannot be too excessive and focus on entertainment. At the same time, the host can obtain treasure chests and open cards. The last is the designated live broadcast mode. A tycoon sets the live broadcast content. When the host completes the live broadcast, not only will the host receive the reward from the tycoon, but also a gold treasure chest. When the system mentioned the last live broadcast mode, one could hear the sound of saliva being sucked in. Jiang Pingji raised her brows. You can erase the last and scrupulous one. The system retorted unhappily, "Who said so? My previous host loved this live broadcast mode the most." Jiang Pengji curled the corner of her mouth mockingly. "Obviously, I'm not one of them." The system still wanted to struggle. "How do I know you won't like it if I don't give it a try?" I don't think those who are truly rich would mind such a small expenditure. Every day, they would throw some money around and issue a mission, just like fishing with a hook. Using this method, they would slowly train the host into what they want. Tell me, what's the difference between the last live broadcast mode and dog training? The system was a little stunned. Its host was about to go crazy, so it quickly tried to salvage the situation. "Dear host, don't be angry. These modes are all preset. I'm just relaying it. Moreover, these live broadcast modes require the host to be willing. There is absolutely no forced buying or selling." The system wanted to cry but had no tears. How unlucky could it be to have met such a difficult host who would always give other people a hard time and was always scowling at others? The system also needed human rights, and it needed to be treated fairly and fairly. They had only been together for 2 days, but the system felt like 2 years had passed. It couldn't go on like this. Jiang Pengji was too lazy to care about the system's thoughts. She had a comfortable sleep, and it was a dreamless night. The next day, on the way to the family school in the carriage, she started the live broadcast on time. Viewers entered the room one after another. They were all viewers who had subscribed to the room. As soon as Jiang Pengji started the live broadcast, they received a notification and could enter the room by clicking on the live broadcast room number. Host V. "Good morning, everyone, *******. After Jiang Pengji greeted them, many viewers said good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to her one after another. It seemed that there were many people with jet lag in this small live broadcast room. She was bored, so she asked the viewers for their opinions. "Host V, do you have any live broadcast content that you prefer to watch?" Tudufeichio. "Host, you can learn the 4 arts, I can secretly learn from you. Then I can go out and show off. Dezhuangzhu Furen, I can read stories. I don't know what stories were like in ancient times. Will there be overbearing scholars who fall in love with me? Overbearing princes who fall in love with me? Overbearing masters who fall in love with me? Even if it's an overbearing county magistrate who falls in love with me, I don't mind. 23333 Deng Hai Kuangzhu, go to brothels, drink wine, hug courtesans, then have sex with girls." Jiang Pengji. Young people in that dimension, do you know that your thoughts are very dangerous? Chapter 37. The Liu family school was not big, and there were only 20 students. They ranged in age from 3 to 15. The size of the school, the number of students, and the age of the students were very different from what Jiang Pengji had imagined. She could not help but think back to her school days. The Zhuangzhu Furen, is this the ancient classroom? The conditions are so bad, and there are so few students. I wonder what the teachers are like. Deng Hai Kuangzhu, this is good enough, okay? The literacy rate in ancient times was very low. There were very few people who could study, and the expenses were very high. The host is in the family school, and the conditions are very good. Most of the expenses are covered by the family. After all, whether it was the cost of hiring a teacher or the cost of writing brushes, ink, and paper for learning, the cost was not something an ordinary family could afford. Jiang Pengji randomly picked a table and sat down. She took out the bamboo paper that her maid, Takshu, and Xuanmei had cut out. She practiced her calligraphy as if there was no one else around. The other students took advantage of the absence of the teacher to review what they had learned the day before. Sorceress Afeng. 23333. No matter what era it is, I feel like the habit of studying in the morning will never change. Misha Warrior Ahuan. Yes, it's full of the feeling of studying in the morning. The other students tried their best to get a seat closest to the teacher. Only Jiang Pengji's table was at the back, which made her stand out. Of course, what made her stand out from the crowd was not her location, but the school supplies she used to practice calligraphy. Most of the students could only carry heavy bamboo slips. Jiang Pingji was the only one who used bamboo paper, which was very expensive. Her calligraphy was the same as before, and there was no improvement at all. To the other students, it was a waste of God's gift. "Oh, I haven't seen Cousin Shi for more than a year. Why is your calligraphy still the same? You haven't improved?" Finally, someone was willing to be the leader and help some people say what they wanted to say in their hearts. Jiang Pingji had to stop writing, and she looked up at the person who had spoken. It was the son of Lu Lanting's father. Jiang Pingji had seen Lu Lanting's memories, and she knew why she did not like to come to the family school. If it were her, she would not have come either. To avoid gossip in the clan, Lu Lanting attended the family school before she turned 8 instead of hiring a tutor to study at home. Lu Lanting had entered the family school at the age of 4, and by the time she was 8, she had become more and more taciturn. She looked at others with fear, and she was also afraid of interacting with others. The root cause was the family school, or rather, the bullies in the family school. Although these brats were young, they also had the ability to flatter those above them and step on those below them. It was as if they were born with it. As a child, Lu Lanting was very skinny and shy. She blushed when she spoke too much. To some naughty children, she was the easiest target to bully. They did not have to worry about being discovered if they secretly ostracized her. At that time, Lu Lanting came to school in a different outfit. She also used the best brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones to study. She was so different from the other children of the Lu family that it was inevitable that some of the children of the Lu family who were struggling to make ends meet would feel uncomfortable. What if it was unfair? Of course, they would find a way to balance it out. They were all children, and it was normal to have some friction. However, they were not stupid. They bullied Lu Lanting, but they did not make it too obvious. In the beginning, they only bullied her softly, distanced themselves from her, and said some nasty things from time to time. Lu Lanting was still young, and the second lady had protected her too well. The silly girl did not realize it. Her inaction provoked the other students. They pushed her aside at first, and then they snatched the brushes, ink, and inkstones. Then, they insulted her, saying that she was raised by a wife, and that she would be abandoned when the second lady had a son or daughter. In the end, it became a bloody incident. Yes, a bloody incident. 8-year-old Lu Lanting was pushed into a pond near the family school. She even knocked her head on the ground. At that time, the bedridden second madam heard the news. Despite her illness, she directly bombarded the teachers and the parents of the naughty children. She even angrily withdrew the financial aid to the family school, forcing the parents to apologize in person. That's right. Although the brushes and ink used by the clan were purchased with money from the clan, in accordance with the principle of being a family, those expensive brushes and ink were purchased in bulk from the second wife's dowry workshop. The quality was good, and the price was quite discounted. It was said that the children were young and did not mean to hurt others, but that was not an excuse for them to hurt others without apologizing. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes. She had only seen the person in front of her a few times during the festive season. He was one of the naughty children who had ostracized Lu Lanting. Also, was this fellow mocking her words? Tudu Feichio, ha, streamer, your words are being mocked. They're red and dazed. Ye Sai Gao, streamer, look at your face. I've only been learning for a few hours. Jiang Pingji glanced at the livestream screen. Her action was seen as arrogant disregard by the other party, and she was immediately put on the spot. With the intention of humiliating him, he sat down in front of her. He scolded her, but his face showed some excitement. Cousin Shi, since you've hired a teacher to teach at home, you should naturally learn from the teachers. You're always playing around and don't know what's good for you. If second uncle comes back to teach Cousin Shi, he'll be so angry that he'll fall. Jiang Pingji glanced at him and said slowly, "It's okay. Only with comparison can we know who's better and who's worse. Father won't blame you." What did she mean? Not only did the cousin not understand, but the audience watching the live stream was also confused. Cousin. Jiang Pingji continued to speak slowly, "It's only March. Mosquitoes aren't that big." What? The cousin didn't understand at first, But when he saw where Jiang Pingji was looking, his cheeks suddenly turned red. He pulled up his collar unnaturally and glared at Jiang Pingji with a look of embarrassment and annoyance. "Cousin, you look handsome. I think your brother is very satisfied with you." Jiang Pingji blinked under the cousin's gaze and said meaningfully, "If you're not feeling well, it's better to ask the teacher for leave as soon as possible. After all, it's extremely rude to be restless in the teacher's class, not to mention sitting down in front of others." After she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji took the book box that she had just packed away and sat down on another mat. Coincidentally, the teacher arrived late and saw the cousin sitting on the floor in a daze. He was so angry that his beard almost flew up. "You're rude." "But, teacher," Jiang Pingji was not affected at all. Instead, she opened the bamboo scroll and listened to the teacher's lecture while reading the bullet screen. "Ye Sai Gao, can someone explain what just happened? I saw that cousin sitting down to lecture the host for no reason, and then the teacher came over and scolded him. Oh my God. This was the first time I knew that an old pedant from ancient times could scold people so harshly and to the point." Chapter 38. The audience was not the only one who was dumbfounded, but there were also a lot of super perverted veterans who came to their senses. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen and laughed. That master was famous for being an old-fashioned scholar in the Liu family. To put it bluntly, he was an extreme turtle. The old man was very particular about etiquette. He would correct anyone who sat in the wrong position, let alone in front of him. Even in the ancient times, which naughty kid would not be beaten up if he took off his pants and walked around? Not to mention that cousin's age was already considered a grown man in this era. Tudu Feichio, 2333. I understand. That little boy might have had sex last night. The host kindly let him go back to rest. He had indeed had sex, but the person he was having sex with was not a girl, but a proper man. Jiang Pingji was very sensitive to smells. When the cousin got close to her, she smelled another person's scent on him. That kind of smell required a period of close contact to be so strong. Unfortunately, she had smelled it before. It was the manservant who served the cousin when he was studying. Apart from that, there was a very faint afterlife smell on him. Plus, there was a little strawberry on his neck, and his walking posture was a little unnatural. She could not help but sigh. Children in ancient times were really king open-minded. "Wutian, I understand. This is what my party says. Senior gay, start from a baby." 23333. Looking at the bullet screen that was getting dirtier and dirtier, Jiang Pingji, who had always been dirty and violent, smiled without saying a word. "Bring my pao lai. I'll just treat it as a joke, but it's so disgusting to actually do it." Jiang Pingji's attitude towards this was very open-minded. In her era, same-sex marriage was legal. Host V, it's not disgusting. In this era, it's a good thing to be brothers. It's even fashionable. As the saying goes, as long as the red flag at home doesn't fall, colorful flags will flutter in the wind outside. Having a concubine on the left and a gay man on the right, talking about romance and poetry was a very common phenomenon. Jiang Pingji had searched through Lu Lanting's memories. That was indeed the case. Men preferred fair skin, and they dressed in brightly colored clothes. Not only did they have to put on makeup every day, but some of the eccentrics had evolved to the point where they were too ashamed to leave the house without applying makeup. Bring me pao lai. But streamer, in this world, you have to get married when you're of age. It's normal for men to be gay. What if you marry the wrong person? In modern times, there were a lot of same-sex wives, but at least they could choose to divorce. In ancient times, same-sex wives were not so easy, right? No matter how disgusted he was, he could only pinch his nose and live with it for the rest of his life. Jiang Pingji had never thought about this problem, because in her mind, there was no concept of marriage. She rolled her eyes and thought about how to deal with the audience. Host V, no matter how delicate and beautiful a man is, his gender is not right for me. I don't even have sexual interest. Everyone fell silent. In the next second, the system prompted the audience, Yuri Saigao, to reward 520 lovers' hearts. Lovers' hearts cost the same as lollipops, but the latter had a pink heart symbol. Cultivation, it's so exciting. I like such an honest and cruel streamer. The system prompted the audience, Cultivation, to reward 520 lovers' hearts. Most of the rewards were lovers' hearts or lollipops, and the system's notifications were drowned out. Jiang Pingji, not only did she have a generation gap with the ancient people, but she also had a generation gap with the modern humans watching the stream. She did not seem to have said anything that touched their sensitive spots, did she? She herself was dumbfounded by this reward. The system suppressed its excitement and poked Jiang Pingji. Host, do you see now? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and asked in her mind, see what? The emotions of the audience need to be aroused. As long as someone starts it at a critical moment, the other audience members will follow suit and reward generously. So, do you want to hire me to be your water army and reward you occasionally? When the system said that, Jiang Pingji could imagine a smiley face with a flattering look winking at her. Jiang Pingji rejected it immediately. No way. The system was angry. When could its host have the self-awareness of a streamer? This was a very common method in the industry. It was not fake. Small investments and high returns. Why didn't she agree to it? A streamer, in addition to her own strength, also needed the cooperation of a team. Otherwise, did the rich people come out of nowhere? Wasn't it the water army and the rich people throwing bricks to attract jade? They lured the rich people who wanted to compete with them and made them willing to pay for it step by step? While she was chatting with the system, Jiang Pingji, who was suspected of being absent-minded, was caught by the master. Lu Shi, repeat what I just said to you. The headmaster wore a serious face. If it were any other day, he would have reprimanded a student who was so distracted. However, since the student was Jiang Pingji, he could not bear to do so. Wasn't the kidnapping case that caused a storm in Hejian County 2 days ago the reason why Jiang Pingji was so distracted? Jiang Pingji stood up and thought for a while. She repeated the master's words without missing a single detail. The headmaster twirled his beard and felt satisfied. He asked leisurely, "So, what do you think of this?" Some people were born to memorize, like Jiang Pingji. She had a photographic memory and amazing observation skills. However, memorizing a paragraph did not mean that she could understand it. Given Lu Lanting's status, people had high hopes for Lu Shi's only legitimate son. The article that the master had just said was written by a famous scholar. The content was not bad, but it had nothing to do with romance. The topic was the hidden danger at the northern border of Dongqing. Would the 3 tribes of the northern borderline try to cozy up to them, or would they try to intimidate them? The scholar felt that the 3 tribes of the northern borderline had been fighting against Dongqing for many years. Both sides had suffered heavy losses. The people at the border of Dongqing were in dire straits. The royal court of the 3 tribes already had the intention to negotiate. They had hinted many times to marry their beloved daughters to Dongqing. Why not go with the flow? If Dongqing accepted the negotiation, both sides would temporarily cease hostilities and recuperate. However, when it came to negotiations, the only way to gain the upper hand was to bring the opponent to the negotiating table. Those who are not of our tribe must have different intentions. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline are ambitious. How can they be appeased by small favors? What was the use of negotiating without a winner or loser? Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and enunciated her words clearly. Dongqing and the 3 tribes of the northern borderline have been in a stalemate at the border for several years. Both sides have won and lost, but Dongqing has never been at a disadvantage. If we take advantage of the situation to negotiate now, how will the sacrificed soldiers feel? This is the worst plan. It will only benefit the enemy while harming ourselves. But the scholars spoke bluntly about negotiating for peace. His intentions are damning. The master's gentle face froze. He did not expect Jiang Pingji to have the guts to criticize the scholar. The other students were also in an uproar. They had been discussing the article, but they expressed their opinions in a euphemistic manner. Their attitudes were ambiguous. They were neither in favor of war nor in favor of negotiating for peace. Each had their own reasons. No one dared to stand firmly on one side. Chapter 39. Jiang Pingji acted as if she did not see the master's ugly expression. She suddenly picked up the bamboo slips on the table, flipped through them, and said, "I read an interesting story yesterday. It was about 8 years ago, when Master Yuanjing went to the northern borderline to lobby and protected the 3 cities of the northern borderline by himself." Speaking of this, the master seemed to have thought of something, and his face turned pale. Jiang Pengji threw the bamboo slips on the ground and said loudly, "Peace talks? The 3 cities have not been returned. How can we talk? Do you remember 12 years ago, when the former emperor passed away and the new emperor succeeded the throne, the 3 tribes of the northern borderline took advantage of the turbulence in Dongqing to attack the 6 cities at the border and slaughter more than 100,000 people? This battle has been going on for 3 whole years, and countless soldiers have died. 6 cities are still in the hands of the northern borderline. On the day of the peace talks, the 3 tribes of the northern borderline came with the conditions to force Dongqing to cede 3 more cities, bow their heads, and pay annual tribute. None of the scholars in Dongqing would ever forget this incident. It was a humiliation that could never be washed away in their entire lives. When the royal family of Dongqing advocated for peace talks, there were many strong Confucian scholars who protested to the death. In the end, Master Yuanjing fought with the barbarians of the 3 tribes and got back 3 of the cities after much difficulty. Of course, outsiders like us don't know the situation at that time. We only know that the barbarians of the northern borderline were only willing to return 3 cities. The other 3 cities were still in the hands of the 3 tribes. The people of the 3 cities became the 9th-class untouchables in the eyes of the barbarians of the 3 tribes. Do you still remember? For the 3 cities, the friction between Dongqing and the 3 tribes of the northern borderline at the border had not stopped for years. If we continue to negotiate now, the 3 cities will never be returned. That great Confucian is so shameless. Just a few words, a few curses, and a few empty and stupid words, and he's actually willing to hand over the 3 cities. Peace talks? If you want to talk, we can talk about it after the 3 cities are returned. It was ridiculous that the great Confucian scholar thought that he could give away the empress concubine and hope that she could enlighten the barbarians of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. It was such a noble task. Why not sacrifice and send all the women in his family for peace talks? Of course, in addition to this, there is another important reason why we can't negotiate. It's the 4 factions of Nanman. Jiang Pingji had seen the great universal geographical map hanging in the study yesterday. As one of the 5 countries, Dongqing's geographical location was somewhat awkward. Not only was it connected to the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, but it also had a junction with the 4 tribes of Nanman. Unfortunately, these 2 places were full of aggressive tough bones. If they were not completely destroyed, the other party would rise from the dead sooner or later. Their vitality was as strong as the insect race. We absolutely can't give the 3 tribes of the north borderline any time to breathe. Once the peace talks start, we'll give them enough time to recuperate. It'll undoubtedly be nurturing a tiger that will invite disaster. When the time comes, the 3 tribes of the north borderline and the 4 factions of Nanman will join forces to attack Dongqing. That would be a direct checkmate. Nonsense. The 4 factions of Nanman are now at war with Nanxing Kingdom. Why would they care about Dongqing? Jiang Pengji smiled as she looked at the young man who had spoken. Nanxing will be utterly defeated soon. There were 5 countries in the world, Dongqing, Nanxing, Xichang, Beiyuan, and Zhongzhou, which was located in the center of the Central Plains. Dongqing was not the weakest, but it was not the strongest either. Nanxing had been at war with the 4 factions of Nanman for the past 2 years. In the past 2 months, there had been many reports of victory, but it would be over soon, the Zhuangzhou Foreign. I feel like I've learned history for nothing. QAQ, so the streamer has traveled through an imaginary dynasty. I just wanted to show off and talk about it, but I was slapped in the face in the next second. It hurt so much. Go. It's not really imaginary. It can only be said that it's another dimension with a different historical development trajectory. There are traces to follow. Shou Tu Guan. It's definitely not our ancient times. Otherwise, it would feel like a spoiler. The unknown variables are more interesting. Cafeteria Dafinanti. Am I the only one who cares about Master Yunjing's setting? Why are you so sure that Nanxing will lose? Although Nanxing was also Dongqing's enemy, they were still of the Yan and Huang lineages. The four factions of Nanman were foreign tribes to them. Because there are too many ignorant people like you. Jiang Pingji had always liked to stand straight. When she lifted her chin and closed her eyes, she gave off an oppressive feeling, as if she was looking down on all living things. In less than 2 months, Nanxing will lose. Just wait and see. When the time came, it might not be as simple as ceding 3 cities or giving the emperor's concubine a marriage alliance. Lu Lanting was naturally shy, but she was not a girl who liked to submit to her fate. She loved to read news about the world. Occasionally, she would disguise herself and go to the tea houses and taverns to listen to the news. That was usually the place where news circulated and gossip spread. Jiang Pingji had her memories. She had glanced at the great universal geographical map hanging in the study room and knew the geographical locations of the 5 kingdoms. From what she could see, Nanxing was indeed very dangerous. She had also read some of the news that Lu Lanting had transcribed, so she was not completely ignorant of the news. In fact, it was not just Nanxing. Jiang Pingji was not optimistic about the current Dongqing. According to the information that Lu Lanting had gathered, if Dongqing agreed to the peace talks, she was afraid that within 10 years, there would be a huge military disaster. Jiang Pingji bent down to pick up the bamboo slips that she had thrown on the ground. She casually flicked the ash off. The old master was very angry at first. She had slandered the great scholar in public and said such harsh words. It was easy to make people feel disgusted. If the great scholar heard about what happened that day, Jiang Pingji might even make things difficult for her when she entered the officialdom. However, listening to her solemn vow, the old master was a little hesitant because he himself did not agree to the peace talks. As long as he was a scholar, he would always have a sense of pride. Dongqing inherited the Xia lineage and called itself a kingdom of heaven. Why would it be willing to bow down to the barbarians? Looking at the group of confused students, the old master's temples ached. He sighed to himself. As expected of Lu Shi's son. Both father and son were troublesome. Your cousin is quite knowledgeable. What he said was not without reason. It's a pity that most of the important officials in the court are in favor of peace talks. The government is also interested in negotiating with the royal court of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. They hope that the northern borderline will marry the empress concubine to the second prince. Outside the school, Feng Jin, who was dressed in a white and green robe, looked at the scene from afar. He had an indescribable expression on his face. Lanting used to be very reserved and gentle. After the ordeal, he's showing signs of revealing his abilities. The person who spoke was Lu Lanting's cousin, Lu Heng. He was the eldest son of Lu Lanting's father's biological brother. If there's a chance, I'd like to have a good chat with him. Feng Jin looked away. Was that really a girl in the house? Lu Heng said, "What's so difficult about that? Call him over and I'll introduce him to you." Lu Heng knew Feng Jin's background. If his cousin could befriend him, that would be the best. Feng Jin thanked him, but he felt a little uneasy. Jiang Pingji had left a deep impression on him that night. However, it was rare to find someone who shared the same opinion as him and had such a tacit understanding with him. He was secretly looking forward to their meeting later. He wondered if Jiang Pingji would be surprised if she knew his identity. Feng Jin smiled and said meaningfully, "Yaoji, you may not know this, but your cousin is a wonderful person." Chapter 40. Therefore, Jiang Pingji saw such a scene that aroused wild and fanciful imagination. If her eyes had not told her that the relationship between the two was very normal, She might have suspected that the era had opened up to the point where everyone was gay. Watching the two of them exchange glances, with a tacit understanding that others couldn't intervene, she sat down quietly and became a spectator. Lanting, let me introduce you to someone. Lu Heng had always cared about his cousin. He worked very hard to have such a good opportunity to introduce his friend to his cousin. Cousin Heng, there's no need to introduce me. I know this person. Why you is so mischievous? Why did you make a fool out of my honest and simple cousin? Jiang Pingji glanced at Feng Jin, who was sitting at the head of the table. She hadn't seen him for 2 days. The guy who had been chased for thousands of miles and had to kill his beloved pet to appease his hunger was pretty decent after he cleaned himself up. Why? Lu Heng was startled. That was Feng Jin's courtesy name. They were so familiar with each other that they could call each other by their courtesy names? Feng Jin innocently opened his eyes. It was Yaoji who didn't give me time to tell the truth. How was I deliberately making a fool out of him? Lu Heng was speechless. Feng Jin put down the tea and couldn't wait to get to the point. Let's put the reminiscing aside for now. I heard what you said outside the room. I thought it was quite interesting and reasonable. If that's the case, guess which prince the royal family of the northern borderline is interested in? Jiang Pingji was a little disinterested. She couldn't get her spirits up for something so obvious. The first prince is the crown prince. That official isn't so muddle-headed. Why would he let a foreign princess take the crown prince's wife? Moreover, the first prince has all his wives and concubines. He also has many concubines in the eastern palace. He also has many children. Even if the northern borderline princess was very capable, she wouldn't be able to do much if she married the crown prince. Secondly, the third prince's mother is the daughter of the Feng clan, an aristocratic family. They value bloodlines very much. If he marries the princess of the northern borderline and has a son mixed with foreign blood, how can the Feng clan accept this grandson? After she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji's eyes scanned Feng Jin's body. Her stare made Feng Jin's hair stand. Finally, according to the rumors, the fourth prince's birth mother died in a strange way. Since he was young, he has been disliked by the people in the palace. The emperor is always vigilant against him. If he were to marry the princess of the northern frontier, he would have a powerful and influential in-laws. How could the emperor feel comfortable? Feng Jin nodded as he listened. The content of Jiang Pingji's analysis was similar to what his father had said, but the style was a little different. So, Jiang Pingji looked at her 5 fingers and smiled. His mother was born in a merchant family. He doesn't have many connections in the imperial court. He only has a few subordinates and the emperor likes him. That's perfect. This was a judgment from the perspective of the Dongqing emperor. From the perspective of the Beijiang royal court, the second prince was also the most suitable. He was stupid and easy to manipulate. The second prince, whose brain was half muscle and half hay, who was impulsive, reckless, and easy to bully, had been chosen. Feng Jin was speechless. The second prince was not well liked by others. His father commented that he was uncultured and pretentious. Jiang Pingji directly criticized him as worthless. However, although the two had different styles, the final conclusion was very similar. The second prince was useless and had been abandoned. Thinking of his father, Feng Jin could not help but ask, Lanting, if you were the king of the Beijiang royal court, what would you do? Jiang Pingji blinked and curled her lips into a smile, which made Feng Jin feel even more uneasy. If I were the king of the Beijiang royal court, of course I would sleep with the princess of Dongqing and have a taste of the gentleness of a Han woman. Then I would send my ambitious daughter to the second prince's manor. After this peace talk, the princess of the northern frontier would at least get the position of a princess consort. Then I would provoke the brainless but ambitious second prince. Jiang Pingji was too lazy to chew on words. When she was in school, she had always passed history and culture classes with a passing grade. The second prince is a very interesting person, but one can't blame one's parents for being stupid. If used well, it is a sharp knife that can stab whoever it points at. After all, isn't killing one's father and brother an old skill passed down by the Dongqing royal family? What's more, The second prince has always been at odds with the Count of Zhenbei, who is guarding the border of Dongqing. As long as the conflict between the two sides is aggravated. Haha, the emperor has been coveting the military seal in the Count of Zhenbei's manor for a long time. He has long wanted to get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. Once the peace talk starts, Dongqing will not have the pressure from the border. The Count of Zhenbei, who controls most of the troops in Dongqing, will be in danger. It was not that there were no wise monarchs who were suspicious, but the emperor of Dongqing was only left with suspicion. When the birds are gone, the fine bough is hidden. When the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound is cooked. Although she felt that the words of the ancient times were unreasonable and anti-human, some of the words were quite reasonable. As long as there is a problem with the Count of Zhenbei's residence, the northern borderline will immediately turn hostile. When that time comes, I think the courageous and resourceful princess of the northern borderline will achieve her goal and completely drive a wedge between the second prince and the emperor. Maybe she can even make some other small moves. Jiang Pingji's words did not give the emperor of Dongqing any face at all. She even brought up the old history of him killing his father and brother. After the chaos of the 16 countries, from the unification of Xia to the division of Xia by the 5 countries, the monarch's authority was challenged several times. His control was greatly reduced, and the aristocratic families developed to their peak. Nowadays, scholars came forth in large numbers and hundreds of schools of thought contended. Speech was freer than ever before. If these words were said in other times, it might bring about a fatal disaster, but at this time, it was not as serious as insulting the aristocratic families on the streets. Therefore, Lu Heng and Feng Jin's expressions only changed slightly after Jiang Pingji said that. After Feng Jin heard this, he sighed. My father thinks so too. If we talk about peace, it is a small matter to force the people to remonstrate with death or to condemn by word and pen. I'm afraid that the Count of Zhenbei's residence will be feared by the emperor. When that time comes, the royal court of the northern borderline will use a knife to kill us and get rid of the thorn in their eyes. Speaking of this, it was necessary to mention the current trend of Dongqing, to respect the literate and suppress the military. The founding emperor of Dongqing was a traitor of the previous dynasty. He betrayed and killed his lord, which was why he had everything he had today. Perhaps they were afraid of this in their bones, so they were very strict with the generals and vigorously supported the literate. Generation after generation, the generals became more and more useless. Now, the Count of Zhenbei's residence was the only thing that Dongqing could use. If it was also courted by incompetent teammates, then it would be terrible. Jiang Pingji said seriously, "This is hard intelligence, it can't be saved." Unexpectedly, Feng Jin was very studious and asked seriously, "What is hard intelligence?" At this time, the audience watching the live stream could not help but send out bullet screen comments one after another. Wu Fa Wu Tian, red hot, dazed, hard intelligence means acquired cerebral palsy, it can't be saved 2333. De Zhuangzhu Foreign, Ichij, what you said just now, if it was in a TV series, it would be enough to exterminate 9 generations. I didn't expect my elder cousin and the handsome young man to accept it so calmly. Especially the elder cousin's gaze, it was as if he wanted to drag his naughty child back to the kennel. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm dying of laughter. I've already taken a screenshot. New emoji GD. Chapter 41. Jiang Pingji was stunned for a moment, then said mysteriously, "Being mentally retarded is an illness related to the brain. It is stubborn and difficult to cure." Feng Jin did not understand at first, but when he thought about what Jiang Pingji had said, he suddenly understood that the girl was mocking him again. Although the authority of the monarchs in this era was becoming less and less dignified and was being hindered by the aristocratic families in various aspects, in the end, it was still the emperor who reigned supreme. Feng Jin wasn't very old, but he sternly admonished, "Nian Lanting is still young and insensible. Just treat these words as the words of a child. There's no harm in listening to them." However, if you enter the officialdom in the future and continue to speak so carelessly, there will be people who will make things difficult for you. Lu Heng was naturally willing to raise both his hands and feet in support of this point. As his cousin, he was very worried about his unruly cousin. He had originally wanted to teach him a lesson in private when he got home, but Feng Jin took the initiative to point it out. It saved him the trouble of arguing with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji smiled without saying a word. She had no concept of entering the bureaucracy and did not care about it. After that, Feng Jin deliberately asked some questions about her studies. It was not difficult, and Jiang Pingji relied on Lu Lanting's memory to answer 70% of the questions. Feng Jin suddenly changed the topic and said to Lu Heng, "Forgive me for being blunt. Although the family school is not bad, Lanting's studies here will be delayed." The family school itself was a huge investment with no short-term returns. It was like a bottomless pit. Most of the time, it was to take care of the poor clansmen who were short of money. The teachers were enough to teach the children, but if they wanted to further their studies, they had to go outside to study. Jiang Pingji said, "I've only studied in the family school for a few days. I've hired a teacher to teach me at home. But I'm not talented enough to live up to the teacher's teachings. Not only did I not learn much from him, but I also made a fool of myself." Lu Heng listened and agreed with Feng Jin's words. He had always felt that his cousin was intelligent and sensible, but he was a bit introverted and did not like to talk or play with others. His studies were mediocre. It must have been due to his previous experience in the family school and the lack of guidance from the teachers. Feng Jin continued to ask, "May I know who the teacher is?" Jiang Pingji did not understand, but before she could answer, Lu Heng said, "It's Wei Yuan, Wei Gongchao." Jiang Pingji's current master's surname was Wei, and his first name was Yuan. In Lu Lanting's memory, the teacher was very strict and would scold her for the slightest mistake. The young girl was afraid of him. No wonder. "So it's Mr. Wei Yuan." Feng Jin had a look of understanding on his face. He was young, but he was familiar with all the famous Confucian scholars, not to mention Wei Yuan, who was talented but resigned due to his personality. In his eyes, Wei Yuan was a wonderful person who would fire his superiors if he didn't agree with him. He spoke bluntly and shook his head. "Mr. Wei Yuan is indeed talented, but he is not suitable for Lanting. If possible, it would be better for you to find another teacher." Based on that night alone, Feng Jin could tell that Jiang Pingji was not someone who would be content with the status quo. Learning from the rigid and strict Wei Yuan, the master and disciple pair would sooner or later fall out due to disagreements or other reasons, unless one of them was willing to compromise. But was that even possible? Wei Gongchao was stubborn and unyielding. He would fire his superior, not to mention Lu Lanting, who was only his student. Find another teacher? Lu Heng did not expect Feng Jin to say something like that. He was put in a difficult position. In this era, a teacher for a day, a father for life was not as simple as it seemed. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, did not show much of an expression. Feng Jin smiled. "Mr. Yuan Jing is opening an academy in Langyi County. If you are interested, you can give it a try." "Mr. Yuan Jing?" Lu Heng was surprised at first, but he could not suppress the joy on his face. "Huayu, are you serious?" Jiang Pingji listened quietly, and information about Mr. Yuan Jing popped up in her mind. Speaking of which, this was also a setting that was very much like Tom Su's Prince Charming. He was the dream lover of all the girls in Dongqing and the other 4 countries. Mr. Yuan Jing was a great scholar in Dongqing. He was born with auspicious signs, and his childhood experience was even more extraordinary. He met a deity at the age of 7 and was blessed by the deity, who cleansed his marrow and changed his bones. Before he reached his 20s, he was already well-versed in astronomy and geography. He was proficient in the 5 elements, 8 trigrams, Qimen, and Duanjia. He was also proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He was even proficient in agriculture and water conservancy. He knew business and military strategy. He was a walking demon. This great scholar became famous 8 years ago when he argued with the envoys of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. Not only did he demand the return of the 3 cities, He even made the envoy who came for the peace talks vomit 3 liters of blood. He died after a few days of recuperation. His words could really kill someone. Since then, he had become famous. While Jiang Pingji watched the drama unfold, Lu Heng's cousin was a little nervous. It's not that I don't believe in Lanting, but she's still young. She was held up by the family school for 4 years. Later, Mr. Wei Yuan taught her at home, but she still fell behind in her studies. I'm afraid she won't be able to do well in her studies. How can she become Mr. Yuanjing's disciple? There was only one Master Yuanjing, but students who wanted to learn from him could line up from Dongqing to Xicheng. There were too many monks and too little porridge. Master Yuanjing's fangirls were too powerful. How could the petite Lanting overcome so many obstacles and finally become Master Yuanjing's disciple? Lu Heng was biased towards his cousin, but he knew how unrealistic it was for her to get a place. However, if she could really become Master Yuanjing's disciple, the benefits would be huge. It would be enough for his cousin to benefit for the rest of his life. Feng Jin looked at Jiang Pingji meaningfully. I don't have much confidence if it's someone else, but if Lanting goes, all she has to do is report her family name and Master Yuanjing will definitely give her face. Even if he doesn't take her in, she can study peacefully in the school. Are my parents old friends with Master Yuanjing? Lu Lanting did not remember such a thing. Feng Jin had heard this from his father by chance. We have some history with your mother. It was said that Master Yuanjing had been very poor in his early years. He was the son of a poor family and almost could not continue his studies because of his lifestyle. Later, in the middle of a snowy winter, he met Lu Shi's wife and received money from her. Master Yuanjing rejected other people's help but accepted Lu Lanting's mother's money. It was confusing. Of course, no matter how confused they would not think that Master Yuanjing was a pedophile. Master Yuanjing was already a young man then, while Lu Lanting's mother was only 6 or 7 years old. However, your mother is really knowledgeable. She only said that the money today was only in exchange for a promise in the future. If Master Tian Yuanjing becomes famous one day, she hopes that you can teach her children a thing or two in the future. This is really funny. A 6-year-old little girl saying this to a young man in his 20s. Just thinking about it made one feel dumbfounded. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.